I think it's important that we continue to keep looking for those shining moments of triumph. And then also support one another. We're stronger together. We're going to get a lot more into community today, and I already feel like we have such a strong community, and so let's celebrate that and support each other. And you will notice the logo is a tiger, and that's not on accident. And you'll see in your programs that we chose a tiger because tigers are known to take down predators much larger than themselves. And I know that human trafficking feels like that. I hear from people a lot of times like, well, we're never going to solve it. It's too big. It's been around too long. That's not true. We can do something about that, and we're going to be like tigers. Now we're going to get into the program. We have somebody very exciting joining us today. I don't see her. I know she's here. Alhena, raise your hand. Oh, she's over there. All right. Alhena Herrera Martin is joining us today. She's the labor trafficking specialist with the Trafficking Response and Intervention Program, which we call the TRIP team, from the Oregon Department of Justice Crime Victim and Survivor Services Division. And I heard about Alhena from Rosa. And then I kept hearing more about Alhena, and then more about Alhena, and the incredible things that she's doing here in the state of Oregon to combat and educate our communities on labor trafficking. I do want to mention that you guys might not think that labor trafficking happens here, but I was at a conference in Wyoming, and I slipped into a session, and there was a video playing on the screen. A guy was doing an expose, or he was doing a session on gang trafficking. And they were showing this expose from ABC News about labor trafficking. And I'm sitting in the back of the room watching this horrendous story on labor trafficking. And then they zoom out, and it's the Rogue Valley. It was Southern Oregon. And I'm like, that's my home. And I had no idea it was happening at this level here. And this was last year. So we're really lucky to have you, Alhena, and your expertise. So let's give Alhena a warm welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here today. We're going to be doing things a bit unorthodox this morning. I know it's bright and early, so I'm hoping the coffee has kicked in. So if you can all take out your cell phones. Thank you. Well, we're actually going to be starting with, we're going to be confiscating all your identifying documentation. And because we also are going to be limiting who you have contact and access to. So we're going to be confiscating those cell phones you took out, any mobile devices, as well as any forms of communication. And then we're going to be splitting into 3 groups. The first group, the folks right here, you're going to be staying here at the hotel. You're going to be providing services and assisting them, providing their housekeeping, their laundry, their services. The second group, you're the real lucky ones right here. You get to go with the organizers and presenters of the summit. You're going to be attending to their domestic work, their housekeeping, the laundry, their childcare, trimming their trees, cutting their grass, and any other job they seem necessary. The third group, you're the real lucky ones because you get to leave the country. You're going to be transported to a country so you can produce cheap goods. One thing is true for all of you. You'll be working long hours with very to minimal pay, maybe sometimes no pay. But because we're nice, we're also going to be providing you with basic needs. But that's going to cost you. And you'll have a debt that will be impossible to pay off. And if you try to contact law enforcement, an agency, or make a report, you'll be faced with threats and violence. Threats against your families, yourself, your community members. Let that sink in. You're forced to work against your will. Where if you try to seek help, you see threats and violence. Where you have mandatory overtime. Where if you are one of the lucky people and are in another country, you may know another language, the customs, the traditions, or who you can ask for help. My name is Alhena Herrera Martin, and I'm the labor trafficking specialist with the Oregon Department of Justice, and I am really excited to be here, and I'm really excited you're all here, and I just want to thank Lauren and the organizers for shedding light in labor trafficking here in Oregon. Before we dive in, so let me find my clicker, but before we dive in, as with any government agency, there's always that disclaimer. So I am bound to tell you that this presentation was created with funding from the Office of Victims of Crime or OVC. My personal disclaimer is to get comfortable with feeling uncomfortable. These topics are really hard to talk about and even harder to understand that they're happening right in your backyard. So get comfortable with feeling uncomfortable. But before we dive in, this presentation is interactive. So I hope you all can engage with me this morning. On the screen, you'll see a QR code as well as a website. Those cell phones that I asked you to take out earlier, not gonna confiscate them. They're actually for you to scan the QR code. If you're in a position where you can't scan, if you go to the website www.menti.com, it'll ask you for an access code or presentation code. It is 44592082. There's also a QR code right on this water section here if you need to scan it. But the presentation will ask you to submit true and false questions just for you to kind of engage with me this morning. So before we get started on our journey, let's do a practice test. Yesterday we talked about, one of the presenters talked about self-care and things that you should do for yourself. So on your screen, you should start seeing options, which will we'll see live results here. So I want to know what you did for self-care. I can tell you that thanks to Rosa's mom and her recommendations, I ended up on a nature walk in your beautiful Lithium Park. So you're very lucky to have that park here. So thank you for engaging with me. But now as we embark on our journey to understand and explore more about labor trafficking, now I do want to know true and false. Labor trafficking only happens in developing countries. What do you folks think? You were listening yesterday, thank you. So yes, labor trafficking, although it does happen in developing countries, it also happens here, in the United States, nationwide, and here in Oregon as well. Although labor trafficking is identified and reported at very lower rates. So yesterday, you saw or heard Rebecca talking about the Trafficking Victims Protection Act. This is the federal definition that defines what trafficking is, as well as some protections for victims. On the screen, you should see some of the protections from the Trafficking Victims Protection Act that was initially passed and reauthorized year by year. And every year, a new form or a new clarification goes in. But for labor trafficking, the TVPA defines labor trafficking as the recruitment, harboring, transportation, provision, or obtaining of a person for labor or services through the use of force, fraud, or coercion for the purpose of subjecting involuntary servitude, peonage, debt bondage, or slavery. That's a long legal word, and I don't know about you, but I am not an attorney. So what does it actually mean? Oops. Oh no, give me one moment. It'll be helpful if I could click the right screens, right? So labor trafficking is actually an action by means of force for the purpose of exploitation. So that means that for a situation of labor trafficking to be potentially identified, we need an action, a means, and a purpose. That means that for an adult victim or a minor victim, a trafficker or traffickers must take an action, the recruitment, transportation, harboring, receiving, and then employ a means of force, fraud, and coercion, the abduction, threat, deceit, and abuse of power and power and control, for the purpose of an exploitation, forced labor, involuntary servitude, debt bondage, peonage, slavery. What services was the victim made to perform? So again, labor trafficking is the action, means, and purpose. Although it does need all of these elements, all it needs is one element from each column to potentially identify a situation of labor trafficking. One thing to note is that labor trafficking has all the elements of labor exploitation, right? We see in some situations wage theft, child labor. We also see very poor working conditions, labor law violations like harassment, discrimination, mandatory overtime, but it's the presence of force, fraud, and coercion that indicates that a victim is not consenting to their own free will. The presence of force, fraud, and coercion is what differentiates labor trafficking from labor exploitation. But what is force, fraud, and coercion? We see these terms kind of thrown around. Well, let's break it down. Force, fraud, and coercion can take many forms, from the physical to mental abuse, verbal intimidation, threats of force, or even the threat of legal action. Force uses the physical control, and we see that with physical violence, physical restrictions, sexual assaults, forced or controlled substance abuse, isolation, kidnapping, restrictions, or controlling the person's access to food, who they can speak with, or just basic necessities. Fraud uses a form of deception, right? We usually see that with false promises, false job offers, or a misrepresentation of working or living conditions. We see that with fraudulent visa schemes, or in individuals getting their wages withheld. Coercion, however, is not as tangible as force, fraud, or coercion. And it's usually not often, and it's usually under-identified as a form of exploitation. It uses a psychological form. It's a state of fear. And we see that usually with verbal abuse, debt bondage, the withholding of legal documents. We also see that with threats against the victim, their family, threats of deportation, getting the police involved, whether that's local or federal, or reputational harm. Think back at the beginning, the group that you might have even felt shame for being deceived, thinking you were all coming to a summit, but in reality, you were about to get exploited. Psychological harm is part of coercion. In fact, the definition of coercion means threats of harm to or physical restraint against any person, any scheme, plan, or pattern intended to cause a person to believe that failure to perform an act will result in serious harm to or physical restraint against any person or the abuse or threatened abuse of legal action. Okay, so we learned what the AMP and force, fraud, and coercion is. So if you can see on your phones, this trafficking requires movement. Okay, so labor trafficking victims are usually foreign national or immigrants from other countries. Thank you for engaging with me this morning. Well, as you're all right, anyone can be a victim of labor trafficking, including US citizens, undocumented individuals, and foreign nationals. Actually, a lot of foreign nationals have their visa tied to a specific employer or to a person. However, there are certain populations, although they're at higher risk, it is the individuals, as we've learned yesterday, the individual's vulnerability that makes an individual more susceptible to trafficking. Although there's no standard profile for what a labor trafficking is, or what a labor trafficking victim looks like, there are certain vulnerabilities and risk factors that make an individual more susceptible. But actually, what are those vulnerabilities? Traffickers, as we've learned, often target vulnerabilities. And they can encompass a wide range of situations, and that includes any risk factors that are individual, relationship, community, or societal. Individual risk factors can include disabilities, discrimination or stigmas, limited or lack of transportation or access to language or educational opportunities, a history of abuse, neglect, or exploitation, or children and youth that are experiencing adverse childhood experiences, and especially youth or minors that are unaccompanied. There might be homelessness, a runaway or stable housing situations. There might be undocumented, unstable immigration statuses, or forced migration. There might also be members of marginalized or disadvantaged communities, like children and youth, Black, Indigenous, or people of color, or members of the LGBTQ community, or individuals involved in systems, whether that's foster care, the juvenile or criminal justice process, or even immigration. Relationship risk factors increases an individual's vulnerabilities. They usually include an adult's or youth or child's family members, their social circles, their mentors, people that surround them. And that can increase the ability for them to experience family violence, social isolation, familial poverty, familial trafficking, as we've learned yesterday, forced migration, a lack of support system, family conflict disruption or dysfunction, or even an intolerance of gender identity and sexual orientation can all increase a person's vulnerability. Community risk factors are natural disasters, right? Every summer that we have a fire, there's always fires that can displace people. We also have a lack of workers' rights knowledge, community violence, disparities among groups, limited knowledge, awareness, or training. Look around the room. How many of you are here versus how many live in your community that are talking about labor trafficking? There might be jurisdictional issues between tribal and local agencies that can put Indigenous people in harm or at risk for labor trafficking. There might be underserved schools, neighborhood, or communities. There might also be a loss of land, culture, language, and identity, specifically for marginalized, Indigenous, and tribal communities. In addition, remote or tribal communities may not have access or the ability to connect with organizations or experts that can identify or even assist or support a survivor. Societal risk factors are usually large risk factors. Those that include a lack of resources, disparity between communities, gender-based violence, systemic oppression, health and economic disparities, cultural attitudes towards marginalized individuals or groups, a demand for cheap goods. How many of us are always trying to find for the lowest price on something? Patterns that reinforce the perfect victim or the ideal victim biases. There's also social factors like policies that can cause economic, educational, and health or inequalities between groups, the haves and have-nots. One thing is true, though. It is important to remember that the absence of any of these risk factors, whether it's individual, relationship, community, or societal, does not mean that an individual or a group of people are not being trafficked. So true and false. Labor trafficking only happens in illegal industries. We have a smart group this morning. Okay, so I want you to think. What industries does labor trafficking actually happen? Think about the industries within your communities. What are they? What job opportunities do you usually see? In your phones, you should see an option to write, what industries are in your community? I want to know. Do you see hotels? Agriculture? Convenience stores? Indigenous communities? Marginalized groups? Massage parlors? Cleaning services? Fishing? Strip clubs? And the issue gets bigger and bigger as you start thinking about what industries there are, right? Well, the truth is, no, you're all correct. Labor trafficking can happen in any of these industries, right? We have your construction, your landscaping, forestry, lodging, individuals forced to panhandle, grocery stores, retail stores. The person that's checking you out at the cash register, they might not be getting paid for that work. It is also important to note that some of these industries will have an intersection with sex trafficking. They'll have a labor trafficking survivor being exploited by day, and then sexually trafficked at night, and vice versa. We might also see, as we see here in Oregon, illegal marijuana grows, childcare, nanny services, foods and restaurants, massage parlors, as some of you mentioned, domestic work, recreational facilities, bars, strip clubs, foster care, group homes. We might even see assisted living. Who's taking care of the folks there? Your CNAs, your medical staffs. We might also see it in the food and restaurant services, recreational facilities. Who also served your food yesterday? So we've learned what the vulnerabilities, risk factors, as well as some of the what action means and purposes are. So let's break it down and let's talk about Patty. Patty is a 34-year-old female who migrated from Texas to Oregon and accepted a job at a marijuana grow farm, given her years of experience in agriculture. Her employer threatened her with physical violence and carries a gun after 2 days on the job. They restrict her from leaving the job site. They force her to work 16-hour days for a month. They threaten her with deportation. They restrict communication with her family. They control access to her basic needs. Her employer houses her in a room with 20 other workers that have not been paid for their labor. So what do we see here? What are the vulnerabilities? What are the risk factors? Well, she recently migrated. She has an undocumented status. There's physical violence, restrictions, wage theft, threats. And I want to highlight that this example is actually from here in Southern Oregon at an illegal marijuana grow. Let's meet River. River is a 19-year-old who received a contract that showed they would be employed as a nanny working 40 hours a week. After moving in with her employer, the victim is forced to work 14-hour days without overtime pay. Then, they are not compensated for their cooking and housekeeping duties that are also assigned. Additionally, the victim is sexually assaulted and not allowed to leave the home. What do we see here? What are the vulnerabilities and risk factors? Well, we know that River had a misrepresentation of the job duties. They are also physically and sexually assaulted. They see restrictions and wage theft. And this can also happen in your community. How many live-in nannies aren't they? Or they might be isolated if they're living in rural communities, right? And you may just see them, oh, it's just a nanny taking care, or it's just a babysitter that I have for the night, without realizing that they might not even be paid for their work. Lastly, we have Jaden, 17-year-old runaway who joins a traveling sales crew. The employer confiscates his documents and belongings. They force them to work 7 days a week. They tell the youth that they are in the debt for the room and food that they'll be deducted from their wages. The youth is never in control of their wages, and when the youth complains, the employee is verbally and physically abusive. The youth is isolated from any support systems and threatened to call the police. If they run away, there's a vulnerability. What's happening in the home that made them run away? They're also a youth, usually more susceptible to trafficking. There's threats, physical violence, and verbal abuse. And if they are traveling, they might not have any roots or connection to their community. Given the complexities of labor trafficking, it is very hard to identify or sometimes having a victim seek help. There are a multitude of barriers that play a role in the identification of labor trafficking victims, as well as their ability to even connect with the community or connect to resources. They include physical violence, starvation, right? We've learned that sometimes they'll be limited to some of their food or basic needs. There might be forced drug use or criminality. Think shoplifting. What about identity theft, card theft, right? It criminalizes the individual. You might even see like, oh, they're buying drugs, but maybe that trafficker is forcing them so they don't get involved. There might be also an intersection with sex trafficking, right? I spoke earlier about an individual, could be a sales cashier. They might be exploited, work 16-hour days, and then be sex trafficked by night. There might be sexual abuse and trauma, serious injury, and illnesses. Illnesses that might, the body usually keeps score, or if they're doing very hard labor or repetitive labor, they might see those illnesses. There might be psychological trauma. Victims often have experienced a psychological coercion, right? We learned what coercion means. So they have a variety of reasons, and valid reasons, to mistrust law enforcement agencies, as well as organizations or individuals. There is that fear of mistrust. There might be shame or stigmatization, right? We talked about earlier. If you were deceived thinking you were coming to a training, but in reality, you were going to be forced to work, you might feel shame. There might be pressure from their families, whether it's for undocumented individuals or individuals that have certain vulnerabilities. They might feel that pressure that I need to support my family. They might also be language barriers for the folks that were going to be sent to another country. What if you didn't speak the language? There might be a dependence on the trafficker. Their trafficker is providing a need. There might also be bias and discrimination towards communities vulnerable to trafficking. Barriers can also include a lack of appropriate victim-centered or survivor-led screening practices. There's also a lack of understanding or knowledge on what our state's sanctuary law, right? We're a sanctuary state. But a lot of folks don't know or don't have the awareness to know how that can actually benefit an individual, to know what type of benefits they may be applied to or what the limitations are. There might also be a lack of resources to respond and investigate, a lack of labor trafficking knowledge. Labor trafficking has been happening for a long time, but it is now coming to the surface. I've been doing this work for a little bit over half a decade, but I've been working with labor trafficking victims this whole time. Knowledge of victims' rights or systems navigations. How many of you know how to navigate certain systems? When you're applying for certain benefits or you want to retire and you're looking at your 401k, do you even know how to navigate those without any support? It's the same process, same fallacy. And there might also be power and control dynamics that come into play, that this makes labor trafficking very difficult to identify. That's why it's important that from the very first disclosure or interaction with the labor trafficking victim, a positive interaction is very, very important. And that is, it kind of paves the way for the survivor's journey. Because they might be experiencing emergent or urgent needs if they're trying to escape the situation. They may need help with safety planning, basic foods, right? The trafficker has been providing most of the basic necessities, where they're staying, where they're living, where they're eating. There might be a language access. They may be coming from a remote area that they speak an indigenous language from their home country. They might not even just general English or other languages that are more popular. They might also need intensive case management, emergency or medical necessities. They might even need a phone to contact their family members. They may also need immigration assistance, community and other system-based advocacy. Additionally, once the urgent needs are met, they'll need transitional needs, like transitional housing, safety planning for any additional concerns. If they have children, they might need childcare, primary care assistance, mental health support, legal assessments, English as a second language education, or education to what their victim rights are, especially if they're going through certain systems, if they're going to court to testify, if they're going to be helping out with the investigation and the detective. They may also need substance abuse treatment and support. and other opportunities specifically for communities and tribal and other cultural specific support, connecting them to people that they may feel more comfortable with. I always say representation matters, and it's very true, specifically for labor trafficking victims or any victim for that matter. They might also need long-term support and healing, right? They can't stay at the transitional housing forever. They're gonna need permanent housing, additional safety planning if they have any additional safety concerns. We talked about how the body keeps score, so they might need medical access for any ongoing support or treatment. What if they develop carpal tunnel during their exploitation? They might need group support and mentoring services, civil legal support. What if the trafficker is the father of the child? Now we have a civil issue. They might need that support. Educational services. If they're an unaccompanied minor, a runaway, or youth, they might need reunification to family. They might also need employment services, financial support, and community and tribal connection, right? If we find a victim of labor trafficking somewhere in Montana, but they're originally from Ashland, they're gonna need that community connection again to feel supported. Trafficking is a community problem. No individual, no organization can effectively address labor trafficking alone. It takes a community effort. These cases take a multitude of resources to empower and support a victim. We saw a lot of the needs that they're gonna need. We're gonna need to build rapport with them. They've been deceived, they've been physically assaulted, they might not trust. It is important to build a foundation of partnerships, and that is essential in building support. In the greatest words of Coretta Scott, the greatness of a community is most accurately measured by the compassionate actions of its members. All of you. What actions? It is important to know that every individual plays a role in helping labor trafficking victims. You are all pieces of the puzzle, right? We are gonna need partnerships between law enforcement, agencies, local communities, grassroots and cultural specific organizations, local and state agencies, immigration and civil attorneys, community-based advocates and system-based advocates. Being able to bring all these pieces together, all these people to the table, that are going to focus on the survivor's needs, that will have lasting impacts on the survivor and their pathway to healing and support. Every individual who has experienced trafficking will have a very unique need and will require a different mix of services. It will need to be collaborative, victim-centered, and multidisciplinary approach to collectively cooperate, coordinate, and collaborate services to support the survivor of labor trafficking. If you're working for an organization and then target outreach of what your organization is not providing, and build those partnerships. So I just want to take a look at this picture. All these systems, think about your social circles, who you can connect to, where do you work? All of these will take a community effort. So what can we do, right? Well, first of all, you're all here, so that is the very first step, showing up. But when you show up, you show up. Using available tools. There's actually in the website framework, they have the labor trafficking outreach fundamental workbooks. And it provides a framework of how to build those partnerships. You can also get started with tracking what are your connections? Who are you connecting with? And updating and see what's missing. Are you connecting with local agencies, tribal communities? What about grassroots or cultural specific organizations? So when you encounter a victim, you know who to contact. Who provides transitional housing, urgent needs. You can also, if you do suspect labor trafficking is happening, you can report it to your local police stations, or you can also call the national hotline. If you work for a school organization, you can also implement trauma-informed practices. If you're a teacher, administrator, you can create a human trafficking school safety protocol. If you work for a hospital or emergency room, or you're in the medical field, substance abuse clinic, mental health center, what about learning the core competencies of human trafficking response in the healthcare and behavioral systems? Are you an attorney, or do you know an attorney? What about getting them to provide pro bono services to labor trafficking victims? You can also become a mentor to a young person or someone in need. Think about the vulnerabilities. Think about the people that you see in your everyday lives that may need that support. We need that collectively support for them. And as a community, you can all provide a support to a local victim service providers. Look at the agencies around you. Look at the agencies that are also missing from this conversation. You can also learn more about our sanctuary laws. You could also, while learning for our state sanctuary laws, learn how they play a vital role with your law enforcement. You can also connect to local organizations. Ask how you can help. They might need volunteers. And my experience working for a nonprofit, there's always something to do, and there's always a need for volunteers. You can increase your knowledge on labor trafficking. This just scrapes the surface, and we can go in every which way to explore even further. You could build partnerships and bridges. If you know somebody's having a vulnerability, what can you do to connect them to services? What can you do to feel welcome in the community? If it's a runaway or youth, what can you do to make them feel supported or seen? If in your social circles, there might be a stigma for members of marginalized communities or members of the LGBTQ community, what can you do to start those conversations within your communities to increase that ability to have different perceptions or at least be able to support an individual? Tap your skills and networks. Organize a fundraiser. You get connected with your community, you get to see who's in your community, but then donate those funds to your service providers, the ones that are on the ground providing services. You can also connect to professionals, advocates, and those that are providing those services and learn from them. What are their experiences? What can you do to support them so they can provide the services they need? If you're in administration, what are you doing to support your staff to making sure that they have enough capacity and are not burning out? As we come to the conclusion of our journey to explore labor trafficking, I urge you to take one more moment to take those cell phones, and you can scan this QR code. It is also at the table on the entrance to learn more about labor trafficking. It has resources. It also has a link to the outreach workbook that I was speaking about, and it also has information about sanctuary laws and just different information to learn more and explore further of labor trafficking. Finally, I challenge you to think about the actions and steps you can do to build partnerships in your communities, address labor trafficking, whether it's spreading awareness, volunteering at your local agencies, advocating for victims' rights, understanding workers' rights, starting a conversation in your communities with your family members and your friends. Thank you for your time and attention and engaging me today. And I'm very, very glad that you're all here today. And I hope that you continue to spread awareness and start the conversation on what is labor trafficking. Thank you.
Can everybody hear me? Yes, good? Well, first of all, everybody's like, want to know, what is the Southern Oregon Exploitation Team? I can tell you, we're not a team that exploits children. We actually combat children. I know it sounds really bad. People see that all the time and think, oh my gosh, they're a team that exploits children. That is not what happens with us. I promise you, we actually combat child exploitation in the Valley. But people want to know what the Southern Oregon Child Exploitation Team is. It's a team that's composed of several law enforcement agencies here in the Valley, in Jackson and Josephine County. Currently, we have one full-time investigator from Homeland Security and one full-time investigator from Homeland Security Investigations. We also have some part-time assistants with Oregon State Police and the Medford Police Department. And then the crucial part for us as well is the attorneys, the ones that we are able to help us put these people in jail and hold people accountable. It's a team effort, and without the Jackson County District Attorney's Office and the Josephine County District Attorney's Office and the U.S. Attorney's Office, we would not be able to be successful. We would just be making arrests and they'd be getting right out. But without the attorneys and the prosecutor's office, we're able to hold these people accountable and send them to jail. So the other question is, well, what do you do? Well, I can tell you what we do currently is we are investigating people that are trading child pornography on the internet. So if somebody's sending an image on Facebook or Google or anything, we get notified by the service provider and we continue and start our investigation at that point. We also, if we receive images from an individual directly to us in an undercover capacity, we are serving warrants, taking their devices, doing sex offender sweeps, arresting everybody up, and putting them in jail for what they're doing. Currently, we have seized over 300 computer devices in the last 3 years, and we've seized and taken over 400,000 images of child pornography off the streets. If you put that into context, that's 2 pallets. Thank you. That's 2 pallets of paper. We're finding 1 out of 4 individuals that we arrest for trading child pornography on the internet have a live victim as well. Not only are we investigating people for trading child pornography, but we're going undercover as children, as bad dads, bad moms, or whatever, trying to have people come and have sexual contact with their children. During those operations, we're finding 45% of those individuals that are coming from here locally, all the way from all over the United States that have come here and victimized children. We're finding about 45% of them have additional victims that were not reported and or they're going to go victimize next. So that's a little bit of what we do.
So just a warning that the cases that we'll be discussing and the stats we'll be given, they're very, very negative. They're the worst cases that you can think of as a parent, as an educator, as a supporter. So if you need to take a moment to take a deep breath, if you need to, step out of the room, absolutely understandable. But also a warning after watching this, please don't go home and take all of your kids' devices. Please don't immediately jump to that. Go ahead. So the reason this kind of started is because Oregon has a very large sex offender problem. According to the 2023 National Sex Offender Registry stats, out of every 100,000 residents, we have 772 registered sex offenders. So that's what kind of motivated this team and also helps you see that this problem is local. It's national, but it's also very local.
So how do you notify, or how do you know who a sex offender is in our community? Well, we have a video here to kind of help you figure out how we can identify who our sex offenders are.
When I was just starting out, it was harder. You really had to keep things hush-hush. But then the internet came along, and everything changed. Now we hide in plain sight and share all kinds of things. We review, rate, make recommendations, just like anything else out there. Pre-internet, you know how hard it was to pretend to be a 9-year-old girl? Now I just roll up looking like their BFF. And the best part, the only people who could stop me pretend I don't exist. You ask me, there's never been a better time to be a monster.
That video really rings true. We do not know who these people are. They are intermixed in every fabric of our community. Many years that we've been investigating these cases, we've investigated numerous public figures in our community. We've investigated police officers, unfortunately, teachers. It's everywhere. You cannot see who these people are. And a prime example here is a local case study that we worked on. Miss Lester was a case that we investigated back in 2020. She was new to our area and started volunteering at a local school. And during that time, we got a cyber tip. It was actually from a service provider who reported one image of child pornography being traded on the internet. And this is the impact of just one image. Everybody's like, well, what's one image? What's the big deal? Well, one image could be the life of a child, right? We don't know who that child is. And I can go down a whole gamut on that one. But it was one image of a child under 10 years of age, and they were engaging in sexual activity. I'm not going to talk about what that was, but it was pretty graphic in detail what that was happening with the child. So we ended up starting the investigation. We wrote search warrants, subpoenas, and we were able to identify our suspect as Miss Kayla Lester. We knew that she was a volunteer at school, and we needed to get to her quick to make sure that she wasn't victimizing kids at school or what was going on with that. We only had information at that point that she lived with her parents, and that was it. We served a warrant on her residence. We had her come to the door. We asked anybody else here. She's like, well, my 8-year-old daughter's in the back room. We call out to the back room, have her come out, and immediately we could see that the 8-year-old daughter was possibly the same child that was in the image. She looked very familiar to her. We removed the child. We interviewed Miss Lester. She's like, I've never done anything to my child. She denied everything. Unfortunately, with the laws that are in the state of Oregon, we're not able to go through the devices right away. We have to apply for a separate search warrant. And then after we got into the devices, we found that she was trafficking her child out to other people. These are actually the texts that she was sending and exchanging with other people. She wanted to meet with people to have sexual contact with them, to include having sexual contact with her daughter as well. We knew it was her daughter being trafficked because the pictures in the photographs that she was exchanging with the individuals, it was her daughter. It was in their residence. It was the clothes that she was wearing. We were able to determine and prove beyond a reasonable doubt that it was her. Even after we interviewed the child, she made no disclosure. Even when we showed her pictures of herself, she made no disclosure of abuse. She did not want to disclose. And that's okay. We don't expect everybody to tell their story. When they're ready to tell the story, we want them to tell the story when they're ready to do so. But we were able to put that to an end because of the fact that we were able to go investigate one image of child pornography. She has since now pled guilty, and she's now serving 13 years in prison, and she'll have 20 years of supervision through the federal system. But how does exploitation work on the internet? Like, it happens everywhere. How does it exactly work? And here's a video to kind of explain that.
Dinner in 5 minutes, Evie.
Don't be shy. You look so pretty in your picture, Evie. Just want to see what you've got under there. Just for me.
Dinner's ready.
Okay, Mum.
Girls are increasingly being groomed by adults to create sexually explicit images and videos. Make sure your home doesn't have an open door to child sexual abusers. Talk to your child. Agree boundaries and set device controls together. Visit talk.iwf.org.uk for guidance.
That video is exactly how it works. I can tell you what happens every day. I go undercover almost weekly, and 5 to 10 minutes, maybe even 20 minutes, I'm talking to 40 individuals that believe that I'm a minor female or a minor male, and they're immediately trying to groom me to get me to do sexual things for them on the internet. We worry about locking our doors. We worry about making sure the house is secure before we go to bed at night. But I'm telling you, our devices, our gateways, we never lock the devices, and they're in there. And you can be talking to that many people that quick. I'm sorry, it went too fast. How does it happen? Well, the first thing is, it doesn't really matter where you go on the internet anymore. These individuals that are seeking and trying to target your children are going to go where the kids are at. They are interested in kids. They want to abuse kids. They are going to go where your kids are at. They know where the kids are at. They're going to go to the gaming platforms. They're going to go to the chatting platforms where they're going to be, and they're going to immediately try to build a relationship with them. As they go through the process, they're going to try to move them to different apps that they know that are not law enforcement friendly, and be able to help them cover their tracks. But they're going to start that grooming process. What they do is when they get into the grooming process, they're going to go ahead and they're going to continue to talk to them and get them to start moving to the process of where they want to talk sexual stuff and get stuff from them. They're going to start really common just stuff, try to find interests that the kids are interested in. It doesn't matter what those interests are. That perpetrator is going to have the same interest because they want to build a rapport with those kids. They're going to talk just generically about things. They're going to be like, hey, what did you wear today at school? Oh, you wearing that? You weren't wearing, and then the kid will reply, well, yeah, I was wearing a shirt and jeans. Oh, no underwear? He. They're going to ask them what kind of bra size they have, what size their breasts are, what kind of a lot of questions about their hygiene that no normal person would do in a normal setting. They're going to actually try to take their family away from them by isolating from their family. Let's keep our relationship secret. Don't tell anybody about our secret. They're going to try to isolate them. Your parents don't understand you. These are the things that I want to talk to you about. We understand each other. They're going to try to groom them and try to build a rapport with them and isolate them from people that they trust. The really majority of these people are trying to get child sex abuse material out of these kids for their own sexual gratification, and they're going to try to take that material and trade it with other individuals to be able to get additional images. There are the types out there that will do the financial gain, and those are mostly from overseas individuals that are from Africa and the Middle East and so forth, where they're trying to exploit kids. Once they get those images of their genitalia or whatever, then they're going to exploit them for financial gain, and that's what their main goal is. There are the individuals that are trying to exploit children online sexually so that they can come and meet those children. It's statistically low, but it does happen. Most people think they're safe behind the internet and behind their computer screen, and they don't want to take the risk of actually going out and meeting kids, but they do go out there and meet them. But the majority of the time, they're going to want to try to meet them, get images of them, and then coerce them into doing additional things, putting on shows for them, doing additional sexual stuff. And so it all starts about the grooming and building a rapport with them, moving the process on and getting their CSAM material. Once they get that, then the sextortion stuff begins. And I think this is a good video to explain how that works.
Hey, Zach. It's me. I can't stop thinking about you. I know you've been waiting for this for a while. I wanted to give you something special. Who are you? Why are you doing this?
This happens every day in Southern Oregon. I can tell you about one case in particular in 2020. This case is with Michael Ferris. This case came in. The victim was a local survivor in a very small community in Jackson County. Probably not even the size of a town. That's probably a very small town out in a rural area. So it's not just the big cities, it's the small towns everywhere this happens at. The individual reached out to the victim on Facebook. He said his name was Sammy Gray. Well, the victim thought that this Sammy Gray was her friend named Sammy at her school, and they started to communicate with each other. The individual said, looking for friends, how old are you? No matter what this individual did, no matter what age the victim told them, he was the same age as them and was looking for friends. He would communicate with this juvenile and said, hey, do you have any brothers and sisters? He had different tactics of trying to harm these kids. And he asked him if he had any younger brothers and sisters. And the victim said, I have a younger brother. And the suspect says, oh, isn't it annoying when your brother comes into the bathroom and when you're changing? The juvenile said, yes, it is very annoying. And the suspect's like, I'm going to make that stop for you. Don't worry about it. It's going to end. And the child said, well, how's that going to happen? And he's like, I'm going to call the authorities and I'm going to have your brother removed and you'll never see him again. Well, the 16-year-old female was like, I don't want my brother removed. I love him. It's annoying when he comes in, but please don't take my brother away. At which point he's like, I won't do it unless you send me nude images of yourself. She ends up doing it to try to protect her brother, at which point the conversation turns into a coercive conversation. Photos aren't good enough. You need to have more light. Nope, wrong angle. You need to do it in this angle. Didn't see your face in that picture. You need to have a picture of your face. You weren't smiling in those pictures. And it went on and on from there. This happened in less than an hour time frame with this juvenile. Luckily, her brother heard her upset, crying, told her mom. Mom found the device and took the device and reported it to law enforcement. We started our investigation and we went through the process and we ended up writing search warrants for the Facebook accounts. We found in a 2-month time, he communicated with just under 1,900 juvenile females throughout the United States and Canada. Of those, most of those girls did not get victimized, thankfully, because he focused on other girls that he were able to victimize. And we found that in that time, there was an additional 27 additional victims throughout the United States. You can see a map here. Those are all the states and provinces that this guy victimized somebody in a 2-month time frame. Those are some of, here's some of the messages that he had and he would communicate with them. Obviously, we blacked out the victims' names to protect their identity. But not only did he use the little brother story, but he would also use his stories of like, I'm law enforcement. I see your images on the internet. I need to take them down, but I have to prove that they're yours. Please send me your nude images. Juveniles would do it. He would also pose as somebody that he was also the same age as them. I'm a victim of sex abuse. And he would get these young girls to tell him, I was also a victim of sex abuse. And he would tell them, I can tell you why you're a victim of sex abuse, but I need to see the pictures of your breasts because the size of your nipples will determine why you're a victim of sex abuse. And they would do it, and then he would coerce them into do these sexual acts. He would also talk to kids that had cancer and were going through treatment, and he would say, I can tell you why you have cancer. Same method, they would do it. And at that point, once he had those images, he would coerce them into doing several different things. He would have them do shows, have sexual contact with their animals in the home, with their parent, with their siblings, and so forth. One individual child that he victimized, she was talking about she was currently being abused by her father, and he said he was going to report it to the authorities, and she's like, please don't report it to my authorities because he's the only provider for my family. We're dependent on the money that he provides, and then he would coerce her to basically record herself having sexual contact with her father and record it for himself. As we continue with the investigation, we found that he was out of Illinois in the city called Mill Shoals, and that is probably a small town. Nobody knows where it's at, no law enforcement. We tried to work with the local authorities out there. They didn't want to help. They were like, this is nothing, we don't know what to do. You need to call somebody else. Everybody we called said, we cannot help you. And this is why we have a task force and we're able to partner with our federal partners because the federal government was able to assist us. Homeland Security paid for us to go out there, seize his electronics, and bring him back and hold this person accountable. Because out of everywhere else, without the federal partners, I don't know if we would have had a successful prosecution because the local authorities did not have the resources to help us even when we tried to work it on the state level here. When we seized his devices, we found that during the time that we were trying to get out there, he victimized about another 30 individual girls with another account doing the same thing. He denied everything. He was arrested, charged. We went to trial on this. He fought all the way through. We fought with the court system. He won every appeal, every motion that he fought was given in his favor. When we were in trial, the judge not once favored in the prosecution's side on any objections. Luckily, he was found guilty, and he will serve 75 years in prison because really doesn't have anything to appeal on because he won everything at that point. He's a prime example. I wish I could bring other local cases in. Unfortunately, these cases take a lot of time. This happens every day. This is not the only person. We have local people that do the same thing and the same tactics that this individual does. But this does have a big impact on our children in our community. And I can talk all day long about how it is, but I think it's most important that I tell you about Amanda Todd's story. Amanda Todd, she was in 10th grade at the time. Oh, I'm sorry, in 2010, she was just starting to go into high school. She had just moved in with her father, and she started to be talking to people online because she didn't really have any friends. She was new to the area. And she ended up meeting an individual online who extorted her just like Mr. Ferris did. After this individual, when she wouldn't do what he wanted, he would actually share her images with her schoolmates, and she would get bullied and made fun at school. They moved schools, and then he would follow her and basically would send her nudes to all of her new schoolmates at her new school. They reported to the authorities, and the authorities said at the time, there's nothing we can do about it. I'm sorry, but we don't know how to track people on the internet. She ended up keep getting bullied at school, and she kept on being exploited by that same individual. Her dad and her ended up moving to a new home, sold their home, new school district, changed everything. And this individual continued to follow her and exploit her, and all the kids in her school would bully her. And this is her story. So I can tell you, Amanda's story is impactful. It reaches all of us. It's not just her, it's everybody, even kids in our own community. Unfortunately, a month after Amanda posted this, she committed suicide. Due to her suicide and her death, the local authorities in Canada dedicated 20 full-time investigators to investigate the bullying and why there wasn't any action taken on this individual. The good news is they did find the individual out of the Netherlands, and they found that he was victimizing kids all over the United States, Canada, and the United Kingdom. They arrested him. He got 11 to 12 years of prison in the Netherlands, and then 13 years in prison in Canada. Her story's not alone. I can tell you, in Rogue Valley here, I've had so many survivors. I can't count on how many survivors we work with, and most of them will run away to drugs, alcohol, and I've even had survivors commit suicide and die in our own area. I would recommend reading her story, getting to know more about her story and stuff like that. I'll stop being the doom and gloom, and Sarah's going to talk about the good stuff about how we can protect ourselves.
All right, everyone, I think we all need a little bit of a deep breath and a shakeout. That sadly is the truth of what this work is. And you're entitled to your feelings. You're entitled to your anger. You're entitled to your fear. It's horrific. But sadly, as Steve said, this is way too common. It's very, very common. So the first thing you need to know to protect yourself, your children, your family, is to know that once something is on the internet, it is nearly impossible to take it off. So just be aware of that and know that that's there, and anything that you're experiencing, you probably aren't the only person who's experienced it. So if you notice your children having an experience like this where they're being sextorted, immediately stop communicating with the suspect and block the user, and then save all the evidence you can. The pictures, the text messages, the username, anything you can, save it. Teach your children some of the grooming tactics. Let them know that this is out there. I know that so many people want to keep the innocence of their children, but sadly this is happening more and more common, and at younger and younger ages. In our last op that we just did recently, even though as the press release said, we had 7 arrests, we interacted with over 40 individuals, and a lot of them didn't reach the threshold of crimes, but they were communicating with who they thought were underage children, and they knew that these were underage children. So obviously, it is out there. So teach them grooming behaviors. When they're on these gaming platforms, when they're on these social media platforms, Also look at the warning signs of someone wanting them to leave to another platform that is more anonymous, that can't be tracked, and that can't be subpoenaed. And also have a very open communication with your children. Let them know what good secrets are, what bad secrets are. Let them know that really it's shame and fear that keep this going, that keeping it in the dark is not helping, and keeping it secret and shameful, it doesn't help them and it doesn't help us as a community. So there's a lot of warning signs, and they can be varied, and especially with the age of your children, it can be one thing or it can be another, but a lot of the things that we see are changes in their connection with their devices. Did they go from using it a couple of hours to using it constantly at night when they take it in the bathroom, they take it with them when they're having dinner? Are they super connected to it? Are they afraid when you warn them that, you know what, you've had too much device time, I'm gonna take it away? Are they having more than a normal response to not having that device? Are you noticing issues with their relationship with their friends and their family? Are they having issues with those that are normally who they are close to, their hobbies? Are they no longer interested in a sport? Are they no longer interested in whatever entertainment that they go to? Are you noticing them isolating themselves completely, that they have shut off completely? I know teenagers aren't super open anyway, but any relationships that they do have, are they shutting off? Are they becoming more silent? Are you noticing weight gain or weight loss in excess? Are you noticing changes in dress beyond them trying to learn and explore themselves? Are they getting random gifts, new things that you're like, where on earth did that come from? Do they have multiple devices? Do they have multiple screen names, usernames on all sorts of different platforms? It all comes down to, do you know your children or the people around your children, or if you're an educator, your students, you tend to know them so much better than so many. So just being aware of these changes and what are the normal developmental changes and which ones are more severe. And if you believe that you're seeing an exploited individual, please, please, please believe them. It takes so much to come forward and say that they are being victimized in one way or the other. And so often we hear about female victims. We know that there are also male victims, but there's even more of a stigma of not coming forward with that. So just please, please, please believe them. Don't be angry that they have chosen to go on these platforms, or that they're been curious and made common mistakes that are out there. Also, don't engage who this possible offender is. Don't get angry and message that you're going to go over there and whatever. Don't engage with them. And again, preserve that evidence. Block that person. Stop that account. But again, take screenshots. Write down everything you know. Time, date stamps. Anything that can be helpful. And then contact law enforcement. Especially locally here, there is this team. We know what tools can be used. And we're here to help those victims. Also, as we're seeing now, there's so many different community partners that are here to help victims and survivors, to help them see that they are not alone, that they are not, this sounds weird, but they're not unique in this type of victimization, that it is all too common. So knowing that they have a community, and that even though something horrific may have happened to them, and maybe some intimate image or something very vulnerable is out there on the internet, they're not alone, and they're not the only one who's had this experience, and that life is still worth living, and there are still people that love them. And also just to know that the victims are not in trouble, that these exploited individuals, they're not in trouble with law enforcement. There's no charges for them. They are in no way to blame or put any fingers pointed at them. So I think a lot of the tools that have been written down to protect yourself and your children, like it comes down to communication with your kids. Let them know that there is a problem, that when they're out on social media, and it's not going anywhere, social media is not going to just disappear, but to let them know that communication is the key, that I know you're going to be on your phone. I know that we're all pretty married to our phones. We're all within feet of our phones. But knowing when it is appropriate phone time, if there's a family plan of, at dinners we put our phones in the middle of the table so that we can have family time. Or when we're out with friends, have them make a pact of like, we're going to be out together and have contact and not be on our phones. And knowing that we're going to have check-ins with our phones. Privatizing our accounts in the App Store and having an agreement with them that, you know what, I'm going to be here to help have a password protected for your app. It's not that I don't trust you, and it's not that I'm trying to keep anything secret, but we're here to help you, and we're here to keep things safe. Another one is to, let's see, where am I at? My brain's just wandering. Turn off location services. That is a huge one. We give away so much of our own privacy through location services. When you tag where you're at, when your children show the front of your house, when they share all of their favorite things on social media that makes it easier for them to be identified. And sadly, parents are just as guilty of that when they do their child's first day of school. This is their favorite thing, this is their favorite color, this is what they want to be when they grow up. It's cute and adorable and I love it, but it also is giving access to would-be offenders to know more about your children and to gain their trust. So it's all about making that agreement. Also on these gaming platforms, letting them know that they're allowed to have friends that you know and they know. So not having strangers that they can communicate on these apps, because that is becoming more and more prevalent of them being on this gaming platform and then getting them to go talk somewhere else where you are unaware and where they are vulnerable. So making that agreement of, hey, you can have this gaming app and we can play during these times, but we have to know your friends. We have to know that they're real people, or they're people you go to school with, or they're people with your hobbies. Also, just let them know that everything they do online is permanent. And I don't know about you, but 10 years ago on Facebook, I'm kind of embarrassed of the stuff that I posted. So it's completely common to look back and go, ooh, that's a little awkward, and to let your kids know that that's totally fine. We're all learning in this new and digital environment that we're gonna be weirdos at some point or another. We're gonna show our vulnerabilities, and to let them know that there is no shame in that, because I feel like shame is such a key indicator for helping them become more vulnerable. And don't let them carry that shame for making mistakes or for being embarrassing, because they don't need to be embarrassed. And let's see. And also, if and when something does happen, don't immediately delete it. Please save it and preserve it for evidence. Criminals can be smart, but there are more and more tools for us to help identify them and get them. So definitely, it all comes down to communication and community and knowing your children and seeing who they are as they develop and helping them have a more confident experience online. Again, don't be that parent that's like, we're taking your phone, you're not getting any devices, that's it, we're done. Because that'll just shame them even more and make them feel isolated. There has to be a healthy way to interact with devices and phones as a part of your family and community life, because they are here to stay. And finally, some of the resources that I think are very helpful for parents and teachers and community members: the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, NCMEC. Law enforcement loves a good acronym. It is incredible. They deal in helping find missing children, but another whole element of what they're going into is exploited children in these images that are flagged as CSAM. They have a wonderful tool for parents and for educators. It's called NetSmarts, and it has videos for each age range of children to see what healthy technology usage is. And they do it in lovely videos. They help them see. I think that sextortion video of that girl in the tank top came from NetSmarts, and it helps them see that they're not the only person, and also some tools and tricks for families to put in place so that they can be safe as a family and safe as a community. So I'll leave that up there, but that is one of our final slides. We did leave some available time for questions if anyone has, and I believe we are still running very good on time according to this clock. So if there are any questions, we would love to answer them here, or if you don't feel comfortable doing, oh, yes?
I was just wondering if you guys do education.
So far, we haven't done any education in the schools, or I'm not aware of it. No.
No, we're not. No.
I don't think we've been asked to do anything in the schools.
No. There's another question back there.
When you got the National Center for Exploited Children, what my question is,
Please repeat the question.
The gentleman was asking if you are noticing that there's children that are possibly missing from other countries. Where would you go to look into that or to report that?
I don't know. That's a good question. We normally work with the National Center of Missing and Exploited Children, and then we will, for locally, if we get a missing person report, it doesn't matter where they live. So if you know or get information of a missing child, any law enforcement agency is supposed to take that report right then and there. And then they forward it to the appropriate law enforcement agency, and then they corroborate with NCMEC. But I don't know. I know every country has their own reporting system and all their own systems like NCMEC, but I don't know who the other countries are. National Center of Missing and Exploited Children. So that's NCMEC is an acronym for National Center of Missing Children.
Luckily, they've made their website easier. It's missingkids.org. So that is a little bit easier than NCMEC. I'm sorry, we had one there and then that over there.
Online, like Facebook and other
20 minutes.
children-friendly sites. I mean, do they monitor? Do they send? Are they cooperating? It seems like it would be pretty simple for them to monitor child activity and.
So I was making sure we had enough time. I want to make sure I understand your question. So you're asking, does the online service providers require to make reports to when it's being transferred? So I can tell you there is a national law. So if any time there's an image being traded on the internet or any child being exploited on the internet, they're required by law to make a report to the National Center of Missing and Exploited Children. And what happens is they get the report from those service providers, they get the data and they send it to us, and then they figure out where it is in the United States, and that's how they investigate it. There's different ways they do that, but they are required to do it by law. Some are very cooperative with law enforcement, and some do not cooperate with law enforcement. It just depends on the service provider.
And also, I think a lot of these social media companies don't have a lot of dedicated bodies for that. So I think a lot of it comes down to the users flagging anything they see as suspicious or as inappropriate. And then from there, it can be flagged.
I think we had a question back here.
Yeah, there was one back there.
Yeah, I have a question. Are there specific communication platforms that are problematic or unsafe, or platforms that you wish parents would just see that as a red flag to not have their kids on?
It doesn't matter what platform. I'm sure everybody heard that. It doesn't matter what platform you're on. There's people on there trying to exploit children. I cannot give an opinion on what platforms to use. I'm a government employee, and I am not allowed to give recommendations and non-recommendations. So unfortunately, I can't answer that question. But I can tell you every platform, there are perpetrators on those platforms, especially where kids go.
Hi, thank you, Detective, for your presentation. What I'd like to know is, what would you change? If you could change something in our system, whether it's making the platforms liable if these photos appear on them, or if it's something in our legal system, if you had a wish list, what would you change to take a big bite out of this?
Yeah.
Thank you for the compliment. Yeah, there's a lot of things I'd like to change in my own personal opinion, but I don't think I could give those being in the position that I'm in. So, but it's a good question. If I could change anything, I would like the service providers to help out more sometimes.
How about liability? Liability fixes a lot of things in my experience.
I think liability would be good. So I don't know. I'm not a big expert in this, and I could be off base on this. I can tell you, I wonder if the service providers give us the data that they're supposed to be giving us and the data that we're asking for. I believe that most of these service providers do care about children and they do want to combat it. But I don't know how you find out if they're really giving us the proper data all the time. I don't know. I have never done that research. I've just my own personal experiences. But yeah, I don't know how to answer that question.
I might get in a little bit of trouble, but I think one of the biggest issues we've got is that so much of these providers are now creating anonymous platforms. So we don't have a place to subpoena or records to maintain because they're not keeping them anymore. So that, I think, is a problem, is that the retention periods are getting smaller, and as these investigations are quite long, it's getting harder and harder when the window of when we can get records is diminishing. Sorry.
I'd say as organizer, I think we're changing things right now by raising the awareness in this room. Here's Tina.
Thank you. You talked about one of the things is that perpetrators will move individuals from one platform to another. As a person who answers a hotline, I've gotten several calls where individuals say, oh, they moved me from Facebook to Snapchat. What is the most common platform that you know of that individuals are moving victims from one platform to another?
I would love to answer that question. I'll give you that answer, person to person. I'm not going to give it out now because I know that people will watch this and view this.
True.
And if I'm a perpetrator and I see that, I'm going to go to that platform. And I don't want to give that platform out to somebody that doesn't know that platform yet. But I can tell you, most of the platforms that your kids are using are safe platforms. They care about your kids. They are trying to protect their kids, and they're making reports. I think it's important to make sure that you tell your kids, do not move to other platforms you're not familiar with or you're not aware of, and don't be making those changes.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm coming right over here.
He's bringing the microphone.
Stand up, please.
In the case of Amanda Todd, what strikes me is part of why she ended her life is, why are the other kids so incredibly cruel? All of a sudden, just boom, they're on her. What's up with that?
That is a very good question. If anybody figures that out, let me know. I have done child sex abuse cases for almost 12 years now. And when I started to do this job, I wanted to figure out why people wanted to harm children. I gave up. I couldn't figure it out. I mean, I just can't put myself in that position. I don't know why it happens. That's a good question. If you can figure that question out, please let me know. We could be millionaires together because I think we could be rich. I think it's also, it's the adolescence parts. Kids want to be belonging. They want to be important. But the reason down deep, I don't know. But I think most kids want to feel important and they want to be part of the clique and part of the group and stuff like that. I think it has a lot of things to do with it. But I don't know the core value of that. That's a good question, though.
I've been in education for over 30 years, specifically special education. I'm a consultant working with families and students to ensure that students with disabilities are receiving free and appropriate education. So my question is, are there any legal protections for individuals that are over 18, but perhaps developmentally much lower than 18? Low adaptive skills, low functional skills, low cognitive, intellectual disabilities, autism, et cetera. So are there any extra protections for that population?
I know there's some, like, for sentencing parts of, like, how that all works, but I don't know. That would be a question for a prosecutor. But if you victimize that group of our society, there are enhancements and stuff like that. But I don't know how that works, to be honest with you. That's an attorney question. They know all the ins and outs of that stuff. We're just trying to gather the facts and then give it to them, and then they move forward with it. But that's a good question.
In terms of your surveillance piece, there's no way to. So when you're providing surveillance and you're monitoring, messaging and internet activity with people under 18, there's no way to note that some of those people that are being victimized are basically children, but they're over 18.
I don't know if I understand the question.
So you were describing the ways that you can monitor the messages, the pictures, et cetera, and specifically for individuals who are under 18. Correct?
Correct. The online service providers will do that. So if they know that it's a child, or they know, for example, when images of child pornography being traded on the internet, what they have is the photo DNA. They call it a hash value. And basically, you have a better chance of having two people having the same DNA than you do having two photos. And so they take that hash value, and anytime that image is traded on the internet, it'll flag that hash value and be reported immediately. And the other way is, when service providers know that the kids are under 18 because they put on their accounts that they're under 18 and there's certain things that are being said, it flags it and then they report it. As in regards to people with disabilities and so forth like that, I don't know if they have any of that stuff.
So service providers are looking at what the content is in terms of age, but they have no idea that, say, an 18-year-old with an intellectual disability is somebody who would fall into the same category as being vulnerable, such as a child.
I don't know that. Yeah. These are very good questions.
Thank you for your presentation. My question is, if there's so much prolific activity of men like the people that you showed cases of, if a family has a child who is experiencing this and they do all of the right things, and then they go to their local law enforcement, one thing I heard you say was, one particular county said, like, yeah, we're not equipped to handle that. Do you feel confident that if families started doing this as instructed, that there would be law enforcement resources, or would they just become one of the many cases? And if so, how would law enforcement choose which cases, because you said they're so time intensive, how would law enforcement choose which ones to take? Like, or I guess another way to say my question is, what motivation is there for a family to come to law enforcement and have confidence that there will be action taken?
Good question. Each agency is different, and I'm sure that everywhere you work, there's good employees and bad employees, right? And everybody has good and bad. So it's really, you don't know all the time. You might get somebody that's going to be a very good employee and somebody that's not going to be a good employee. So it really comes down to that agency, and the same thing with the agencies, right? It all comes down to that. I can tell you that most agencies that are not equipped with this, they usually try to send it off to somebody that is equipped to do it, and they usually try to run with it. I can tell you here in Jackson County, we work every single case, and we will work it until it's done, and we will not finish it. Unfortunately, we're getting more and more inundated, and we're getting to a point where we're going to have to make a decision, either put more staffing to it, or we're going to have to prioritize and not work all the cases. Currently, right now, we do work every single case we get. Every case that comes across my desk, we are assigning it and we are working it. Some of them get done really fast. Some of them take a couple years to get done, but we will finish and investigate every single case that comes across our desk here. I hope that answers your question.
We have about 5 minutes left, so we'll take maybe 2 more questions. This is Curtis of Epic Project, who's going to respond to 2 questions ago.
I wanted to respond to the gentleman who asked why kids are so mean to each other. I've been working in youth suicide prevention for the last 15 years, and the way kids learn is through modeling. They're mean to each other because they see us being mean to each other, and they see it on the internet. So the damage that's being done isn't just by perpetrators, it's by cultural norms that teach them how to behave with each other. So if we want to see that kind of stuff change, then we need to change on the internet and in each other's personal.
I think there was a question over here.
We got one over here first.
Oh, okay.
Hey, thank you guys so much. This is, I think, needs to be out there more. So a colleague and myself are working on a presentation very similar to what you just showed, based upon all different inputs and whatnot, and we're creating a type of roadshow that could be replicated for schools. And we started it because my kid's school came to me asking for input, not knowing where to go, hearing from their base of parents, what do I do? I send my kid to the room with their cell phone. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know anything about this. I don't know where to go in and turn off location services. I don't even know how to unlock their phone. Anyways, all of this crazy stuff, right? And we're trying to get this presentation set up, and we're talking about, like I said, a type of roadshow, bringing it to other schools. My question is, why is this not being shared with parents in schools? Like, I don't understand. I'm a parent, and I'm a parent working in an agency, and I'm only hearing about this stuff because we're actively digging for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a
so
good
I'm
question.
just curious, like, is it a capacity thing?
I think it's an invite thing. So if a school calls us and wants us to speak, we will speak to that school. We will go do it. I have done in local school districts, I've done in classes for every class. I did it 1 year, every single class, all through the grades. I taught every single one. But it's a thing that we need to be invited for. And I know there's other agencies that are competing for that time as well. So I know that it's there and they do it. We just haven't been invited. I know that every once in a while we've talked to other schools and talked to parents groups. So like we do outreach and we do speak like this, but it's not into every single class, every single student like you're talking about. We've done it one time, and that was years ago, but we have not been called back to do it.
I think it's also interesting, we're at a time, and this is anecdotal, but we're at a time frame where we're generationally divided in that those that are parents weren't raised with children or weren't raised with devices since they were children, as where their children are now. So it's kind of like we're learning together what this new reality is. And so I think a lot of it is that people, I mean, I would assume everyone in this room, that's not something we're thinking about is how we can exploit children. So it's not something that's in your state of reference. And we've all had so much else going on in life that that's something that I think is shocking to still a lot of people that this is happening.
I'm going to add something. When it comes down to it with our own kids, it comes down to just being involved in your kids' lives. Mm-hmm. Almost every single one of my victims, they usually have no parent involvement. It's either because their parents are basically don't care, they're in drugs, they're not involved in their kids' lives whatsoever. And you also have the single parent that's working 3-4 jobs trying to support their family and they're not around. Mm-hmm. Nothing against those parents that are trying to support their family, but they're working trying to support their families and they're not there all the time. Be involved with your kids' lives, talk to your kids. My kids hated me when I asked them, what did you do today? Tell me about your day. They hated it. Why are you talking to me? Next, all the time. But you ask those questions and be there. And my job, I get called out a lot. I really try to make sure that I make their events and their activities if I possibly can. I've been out on homicides where I went to their activity and then left and came back to the homicide. It's about being involved in your kids' lives. Be that parent. Be that thorn in their side. What did you do? What did you do? Tell me about your day. And being involved in them. That's the key right there.
I happen to know that at least 5 of Detective Bohn's families are here. I'm sorry if I'm putting you on the spot for that. Thank you, audience, for all these great questions. This will be our last question.
Former teacher, former sheriff's kid, and I just don't think kids are as aware of how much trouble they can get into. I hope we can get into more schools and make them all aware. My question just was, what size of staff do you have? And because I know money's short everywhere, how do you go about handing these things out when they come into you?
There's 2 of us, myself and Homeland Security Investigations, and then OSP will help out with some cases and Medford will help out with some cases. That's it. We don't have anybody. I can tell you, I don't know where, it sounds like you're a legislature or something. I can tell you in the state of Oregon, they only have 2 investigators for this job, for the entire state. Mm-hmm. Luckily, the state has just passed a law where they're going to be tenfolding that, and they're going to be starting to have more help combating that. Hopefully the governor will sign that, but it's in the process of moving and expanding it. I hope you get more. Thank you. Yes. So do I.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Talk to you guys on sort of the second part of what you learned from Justin yesterday. So Justin's also our teammate at Epic, and remember he gave an incredible presentation yesterday on demand. And Tom's gonna take it away with talking to us about some of the questions you guys just had for the detectives on how to raise the next generation of men, how to nurture them so that we have a generation of men who will not buy sex. Thank you, Tom. Welcome.
Thank you. I got this one. Good. I've been doing public speaking for a long time, and this has to be, following the previous session, has to be one of the most difficult things to follow. I want to acknowledge that. I want to say thank you to Steve and Sarah for calling us to look at and think about and face something that's extraordinarily difficult. And I also want to acknowledge Christine for kind of lighting that match yesterday in her conversation about familial trafficking, because those things all do intersect. And I also want to say to each of you, I want to express my gratitude for standing in this and weathering this tension. I have so much respect for all of you that have shown up today, that you show up so many places in the face of something that's just really hard. I just want to acknowledge my gratitude for that, and maybe complain a little bit because the previous session stole a little bit of my thunder. They forced all of you. I saw it happening. I was kind of in the back of the room most of the time. I saw it happening, and it's such a healthy and hopeful thing that you had questions. You wanted to know. Really, the overriding question was, how do we keep our kids safe, right? How do we do that? And inevitably, I've been sharing at events like this for over 15 years now, and it's always the case that when you share someone, whether in a public setting like what we had or talking to me afterwards, the question is, usually it's how do I keep my daughters safe? Or how do I keep my friends safe? And it's a reasonable question. Obviously, we know that that's just a normal, healthy human response to any kind of exploitation, is to say, how do we keep them safe from that? How do we insulate that? Any human with a conscience cares about the exploitation of the most vulnerable. Any community leader who takes seriously the charge to build thriving towns and cities knows that this issue of exploitation poses a grave threat to that charge that they've accepted as leaders. Any parent knows deep in their bones that they wouldn't wish this on their worst enemy. So the question, it's more than reasonable. It's the right question to ask. It's always the right question to ask. What I want to suggest this morning, though, is that the best answer to this important question might sound a little bit unexpected. Okay? So I think we started to answer with the Q&A in the last session. We started answering that question, how do we keep our kids safe? I want to add, from my own experience, from our experience at EPIC, I want to add more to that answer. How do we keep our kids safe? I said it's unexpected. I want to also add this with a little bit of clarification here. The best answer to the question, how do we keep our kids safe, isn't simply to do better, more thorough investigations, or to provide more comprehensive wraparound care or services, or to write better laws. It isn't just that. It is always that, but there's more. There has to be more. Each of those strategies are absolutely necessary, but policy, police work, victim services are the response to the problem. And thank God for the response. They are the response to the problem, but they are not the complete solution to the problem. How do we keep our kids safe? I want to suggest that we start by raising safe sons. I have not raised sons. I want to give a disclaimer here. I raised 3 beautiful daughters who are strong and vibrant and a force to be reckoned with, just like their mother. But I didn't raise sons. But now I have 2 grandsons. So as we go through this time, please understand that I am thinking these things through a new lens now as a grandfather. How do we keep our kids safe? How do we keep the most vulnerable among us? Girls, boys, LGBTQ youth. How do we keep them safe? We raise safe sons. So I want to talk about what that looks like. Raising safe sons. Sex trafficking, sexual exploitation, sexual extortion, all of these things. And it's all part of the same ecosystem, mind you. All part of the same ecosystem. It's a supply and demand business. Vulnerable people, often the most vulnerable among us, are the source of that supply. And men, American men in this context, are overwhelmingly the source of the demand for which that supply is exploited. Justin started to unpack some of this yesterday, and I'm grateful just for the clarity of what he brought. But he said something yesterday, it's a business, and if there were no buyers, there would be no business. Please repeat after me. No buyers? No buyers. No business. No business. Now on your own. No buyers, no business. It's in some ways as simple as that. What this means is that sexual exploitation is fundamentally a man's issue. By and large, not ultimately, but by and large, it is the boys that grow up to be the buyers. Again, Justin talked about that yesterday. We have engaged with tens of thousands of active online sex buyers. Maybe this many are women that we know of. It is boys that grow up to become buyers, and that's a scary proposition. But again, referencing some of the work, the research that Justin shared yesterday, there's a whole lot of boys that will never do that. There's a whole lot of men that will never engage in that, and we need to take hope in that. But it feels still like, I have felt this way for a long time in this work, it feels a little bit like a wilderness as a man. Like, okay, we understand clearly what's going on. We see some of the dynamics that are putting the most vulnerable at the highest risk. But as a man in this work, what am I supposed to do? What are we supposed to do as men? I'm not a cop. I've never been a cop. I don't carry the badge and the gun. I'm not a celebrity, right? I have a social media account. I think I have tens of followers. But I'm not a celebrity, so I don't have that kind of a platform. I'm just a guy in the community like all of you men. So what can we do? And it's hard to find your way a little bit. And so what I want to do to start with is I want to offer you a compass. I want to offer you a navigational tool that can help you. And I am speaking at this point to men and the women that love them. So just understand that. This is a conversation for men and the women who love them. I want to offer you a navigational tool, and just to kind of help orient ourselves. There's a couple things. There's a weird tension here in this work when you realize, like I just said, men are the ones driving the demand, but men are also, or have the potential to be, a profound influence in changing the outcomes that we've been dealing with. All of you men, you don't have to sign up for anything today, but just by virtue of being a man in this culture, you have the opportunity to change these outcomes by the kind of person you are. So let me talk about that from a more personal standpoint. When I showed up in this work, I'm a big guy. I'm a old, broken down college football player, but I want to show up and bust heads. Like that was what drew me into it when I first heard about it. And that's not an uncommon experience. And I would credit Justin again for kind of helping me. He very faithfully kind of kept poking at this bear over time, and he said, "You got to put down the bat." That's probably, he was the first one in our community of men. I think he was the first one to see that simply being angry wasn't going to do anything except maybe make us feel good about our anger. So eventually I had to put down the bat. And then I had a conversation with a dear friend who's a longtime, very experienced victim advocate, and this was early in my journey. And I'm talking like I can when I get worked up over something, just intense about what needs to happen and how we need to show up, and we need to protect these women, and we need to beat the shit out of the bad guys, right? That's where I went in my head. And this friend of mine, she patiently kind of endured my intensity, and she said, "I just want you to understand something. The way you're talking right now, the power that you're bringing into this situation, do you realize that's how pimps talk to their victims? I'm here to protect you. I'm here to tell you what's what. I'm here to exert power." And it was a turning point in my own experience where I realized, wow, I'm using the same kind of posture that traffickers used. That was an uncomfortable epiphany. And of course, then I'm reeling. It's like, all right, well, what can I do? If I can't find the bad guys and beat up the bad guys, what do I do? And it started me on a journey of learning what it means to be a safe man. And it started me on a journey where I realized how much good that can do. And so it starts with having clear eyes. What I mean by that is just a naked humility that enables a man to just see the truth about himself. And not just all the bad things either. I think it's important to clarify that. I'm not talking about just seeing all the bad things, all of our failures, all of our weaknesses, but also being able to go, you know what, there's some good things in me too. And sometimes giving myself over to all those bad things is denying the world of all the good things that I have to offer. So it's this kind of humility, and it doesn't mean that we need to be timid or nervous or tentative. Doesn't mean that we should be retiring or lacking in courage. That's not what humility means. Doesn't mean we suppress our personality and our uniqueness as men. Doesn't mean that either. But I had to learn this the hard way at one point, early in my own journey, being kind of getting all worked up, and it was one of my first experiences directly with a survivor. And a friend, another advocate, had brought her to my office just to say thank you for Epic had helped actually get transportation for her to get her away from her trafficker. And we're working with local law enforcement and all that. And she wanted to come by and say hi. And I think it was, in my memory, it was one of the first experiences directly, personally, with a survivor. And my friend Esther brought her into my office, and this gal, she was small. And it was summertime. She was wearing just like a sundress with bare shoulders. And what I remember was a bruise in the shape and size of my own hand across her shoulder. Couldn't miss it. And she was just very kind and grateful. And she said, thank you. And Esther said, hey, would you pray for her? And I remember muttering what felt like the most lame prayer in the world, but like I wanted this young lady to be safe. And so they left, and I ran out of my office and found a stairwell, and I just broke down and sobbed. Because I realized, in general, men like me are the source of that pain. It's the men that that I know, that are part of the world that I live in as a man, that are part of that, and it was humbling. I realized then that humility demands that men recognize this. The same culture that makes sex buyers has made us. We come from that same place. But ultimately, it's not our techniques, or like if I think about the work that we're doing at EPIC, it's not our techniques or technology that make what we do at EPIC effective. It's simply our humility and our recognition that we're not a whole lot different than the guys that we're talking about. And we have a unique voice to speak into that world. It's unique for men. It's a unique job for us to do. We don't put that on law enforcement. We don't put that on victim services folks and advocates. That's a job for men to do. And I owe a great debt to the men of EPIC for teaching me this very thing. So we have to have clear eyes, and when you begin to develop and experience that humility as a man, it inevitably leads to a broken heart. I think these things actually go in this order. Once you begin to see yourself for who you truly are, you start to see the world for what it is, and that'll break your heart. And actually, I know you're already there, to the men in this room, because I saw it happen just an hour ago. I could feel the brokenheartedness over what we were dealing with. And a broken heart, this is also important, I think, for us to understand, a broken heart will trigger anger. And that's normal and right and healthy and human, because we don't want to see it's the thing that gets us going. But anger is not the thing that will keep us going. Anger is short-lived. We need something that actually will last and sustain us long enough. I think about what Tina said yesterday, long enough to stay in this for the long haul. Anger won't do that. It'll burn out. I think it's something like, the best word I can think to describe it is mourning. If you've ever lost someone, you know that feeling when you come to the end of yourself. I can remember standing in my driveway the night my father died and watching the coroner take his body away. And it's like I was so at the end of myself. The weirdest thing about those kinds of experiences, though, is they don't paralyze you. They actually motivate you. You know, I walked away from that saying, I want to be more like my father. And it's been that way ever since. It's a broken heart. And mourning, not anger, will sustain you for the long haul. It's the ability to do what you have already been doing for a day and a half, to look at evil in the eye and stay at it and stay with it. When you see yourself for who you truly are, you'll inevitably see the world for what it is and feel the emotional weight, and that's brokenness. Let me say something about anger again, because this is often what men do best. Anger is easier. To get angry in the face of this injustice and this evil, it is easier. It's also more self-serving and more short-lasting than mourning. Mourning goes against the grain of our masculine culture. We're taught to be pissed off at the world. We're not taught so much how to hold the pain and the brokenness of the world in a way that can actually change things. Anger is natural, but it's short-lived. Mourning is a long-lasting experience. Anger is impulsive and makes us want to act. Mourning makes us capable of sustained and purposeful and effective action. Anger is a small campfire. Mourning is a raging furnace. If we start from the principle that all of us were meant, all of us were created for flourishing, and we see how far we've deviated from that vision. It leads you here, inevitably. This kind of grief is both internal. We recognize, again, our own personal brokenness, as well as external. We have this clear and sober-minded view of what's going on in the world. That's why these times are so important, because they call us, they invite us to face it. Matt was one of our volunteers. This is one of the most profound experiences of both humility and empathy that I have ever seen. He's one of our volunteers, and he was doing a patrol. Again, Justin talked about that yesterday. Doing a patrol one night, and a call or a text came in response to an ad that we had posted, and this guy was angry. He was angry. How dare we, interrupt his attempt to buy sex? And there was pretty furious back and forth. He said, I'm a decorated Iraq War vet, and I just returned from 2 tours, and on and on. Like, just very obviously this sense of entitlement. And Matt is this Yoda-like Portland dude. I mean, he's just amazing, unflappable, and this guy was just trying to egg him on, and he said, "If you're a real man, you'll call me." Matt's a real man. So guess what he did? He called him, and in this most insanely intuitive move, the guy answered. He was upset, and Matt said, "Hey, sir, first of all, before we say anything else, I just want you to know that I am grateful for your service. I'm grateful for you fighting for our freedom. If it's okay with you, could I talk to you about what freedom means for the girls that you're looking at on these websites?" And completely turn that conversation around. That's being clear-eyed. That's standing in this fight with a broken heart. It was just a profound thing. A humble man with a broken heart is a force to be reckoned with. What it produces is strong shoulders. What I'm talking about here is, this is the difference between raw power, which is often in the masculine world, power is wielded over people, right? Can I get an amen from any of the survivors in this room? I mean, you know that. We know that. That's raw power. Strength is something different. It's disciplined and purposeful. It comes, the idea, the language around this actually comes from an ancient word that has been poorly translated to our English word meek. You may have heard the term, blessed are the meek. It's that word. It's obviously that saying lost in translation. A lot has been lost in that translation. It doesn't mean avoidance. It doesn't mean niceness. It doesn't mean weakness in personality or character. It's actually an older word than the biblical reference. It's an older Greek word that speaks of the iron or the metal bit that goes in a horse's mouth and turns this, 1.5 tons worth of raw power into something that can be used for purposeful strength. Strong shoulders, a war horse, a draft horse. So when I'm talking here about strong shoulders, what I'm talking about is the kind of strength it takes to lean into something difficult. Again, I learned this from our men at Epic. For years, they have leaned into this. They have stayed in this work, and that takes a kind of strength. And it also means the kind of shoulders that can be leaned upon by people in need. But it has to feel safe. But that's the kind of thing I'm talking about when I talk about strong shoulders. It's the disciplined and principled use of strength, an inner disposition of control that's born out of humility. It's a kind of quiet inner strength that cares more for doing what's right than for the approval of others. Howard was another one of our volunteers and early in our work, and we were all just learning. Like we're all starting to connect the dots and realize how sex trafficking is part of that larger ecosystem of sexual exploitation that includes things like pornography and strip clubs and all of that. And Howard had a friend who was getting married, one of his best friends, and he had asked to stand up in the wedding, and his friend said, "That's great. We got a bachelor party coming up, and we're going to go to a strip club. I'm so excited." And Howard just said, "You know, I've learned some things, and I connected the dots, and I can't do that." And so his friend said, "Fine, you're out of my wedding," and just went to the strip club with the rest of the guys. That takes strength to do that. Over and over, this is the kind of strength that I have seen manifested in men that actually make a difference in this work. And again, I see it in the men of Epic, but it's not limited to them. If you find any man that's making any kind of positive impact in this world, you're going to see this kind of strength. And I think it's important to remember that, because we need strength to last in this for the long haul, to go long, as Tina was talking about yesterday. And in order to do that, we have to stay hungry, okay? Now, I'm going to say something very controversial right now. And if you disagree with me, suck it up. Just stay in your seat. But Lou Malnati's Pizza in Chicago, Illinois is the standard by which all pizza everywhere is judged. There, I said it, okay? I grew up in Chicago, and this is the slab o' pizza that I grew up with. And when it was time for Lou's, when we knew we were going to have Lou's that day, we ordered our whole world around it. We prepared for Lou's when that pizza showed up. We made sure that we didn't eat too much early in the day, not too much liquid, because we needed as much room for as much Lou's as we could ingest. And my mouth is, sorry. I'm getting all excited just talking about it. Appetites order our world. They shape our agendas. Men, what are you hungry for? What are you hungry for? We pay attention to our appetites daily, hourly. I can tell by looking at some of you right now, you're even thinking, when is he going to stop talking so we can have lunch? Like we think about this all the time. And here's my point on this. Appetites for injustice are destroying lives. We all know this. We know this probably more than most people. We know how insatiable this appetite is for injustice. If we're going to make a lasting difference, we have to remain hungry for change. This will not happen overnight. This is the long game. We have to have an appetite for justice. These are things that I have witnessed firsthand in the men that I've had the privilege of working with over the last 15 years. These are lessons that I've learned. But ironically, if I'm being totally honest, it wasn't enough to help me completely make that change myself. I I had to come to a point where I questioned what I believed. What I believe about what's happening in the world, what do I believe as a man about my connection to those things that are happening in the world? What do I believe about whether or not things can actually change? And it took a long time for me to change. It took a long time for me to connect these dots. In my late 40s, I was at the pinnacle of what I thought would be the pinnacle of the career that I had chosen. And I was abruptly fired. And with virtually no warning, and my world just caved in on me. Because all of those things, the accomplishment, all the things that my culture has taught me about what it means to be a man were just taken away from me. And there I was, unemployed. To deal with that stress and the frustration and the anguish of all of that, I started running, long distance running. I know you're looking at me and going, yeah, that totally makes sense because you look like a runner, right? I get it. I'm a marathoner trapped in a football player's body. But I ran and I ran and I ran. And unlike Forrest Gump, nobody followed me. But what I ended up doing is I ended up, as a result of that and just a lifetime before that of just beating up my body physically, I had destroyed both of my hips. So by the time I was 50, I had both of my hips replaced. So here I was, I'd lost my job. I had no way to help support my family. Thankfully, I have a wife who's insanely talented and committed to all of us, and she sustained us through that. But all of my sense of masculinity had just been taken away from me. I had no job. I could barely walk around the grocery store. And so all of the markers of masculinity had just been slowly stripped away from me. And at the end of that season is when I started Epic. I hadn't connected these dots until a short while ago, but what I've realized is that some of the reason I got into this was to somehow restore my shattered sense of masculinity. Kind of go back to what I said at the beginning. I showed up to be the man and to rescue the damsel in distress. And in some ways, what I was trying to do was recapture my own sense of what it means to be a man. And it is what it is. I think we all have different reasons for getting into the work that we do, but this was mine. But it was a fascinating revelation, and it's difficult as a man to realize that, to admit that, and to recognize that I had to, what did I believe? What did I believe about this work? And so the most ironic thing about this, at this season of my life, in all my brokenness and just being worn down, broke down, discouraged, hey, I'm going to start Epic. I'm going to try to do some good and maybe restore my sense of what it means to be a man. It was the survivors that I met along the way that showed me what was required of me as a man was not power, but humility, empathy, deep, reliable strength, and a hunger for justice. It was the women that I showed up to rescue. I used the R word, Tina, sorry. That I showed up to rescue were actually the ones that rescued me. And it helped change my belief. I believe that women and men were created to flourish. When I use that word, it means the full and healthy realization of our humanity for the benefit of ourselves and our world. And anything that threatens that flourishing must be resisted and rejected as counter to our dignity as human beings. The importance of this point is that it can help frame the conversation around sexual exploitation. This is a human rights issue. As much as it's a men's issue, this is a human rights issue. I believe that women and men were created to flourish. I also believe that women and men share a fundamental right to equality. Our similarities as humans are far greater than our differences as men and women. For me, this idea is rooted in the Christian creation narrative that clearly reveals that women and men were both created in the image of God, equally, without qualification. I also believe, I have come to believe, that the systems, structures, and narratives of our culture often favor men at the cost of a woman's right to equality. Ours is a male-dominated world. Most of the power, the wealth, the influence that shapes our current existence lies in the hands of men. And sometimes, oftentimes for men, it can be very difficult for us to even identify, to even see how much different it is for women to move about in this world than it is for men. More to the point, when unchallenged, this inequality perpetuates the damage and destruction unique to sexual exploitation and sexual violence in general. The systems, structures, and narratives. I'm so tempted to go deep down this particular hole, but I'm not. I think I'm going to let it stand, because I want you to get a hold of this too. The way of change, think about all that we've absorbed this last day and a half. The way of change is for men to stand alongside women in making this world the way it ought to be. Not in front, not behind, but alongside. That's how we move forward in this, is for us as men to stand next to the women, many of whom you've seen up here and interacted with this week. These are the things that I have come to believe, and it is the survivor community themselves who have helped teach me these things and have affirmed these things in me and in the work that we do. I showed you the compass. I want to leave you with one final navigational tool. We're real analog here. A pile of rocks. How many of you have seen these? Yeah. If you've spent any time hiking outside, I mean, we've seen this. It's a cairn. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. I don't remember when the first time was that I've seen them, but I've spent a lot of time outside, and I've seen them in many places. But they're easy to miss if you don't know what you're looking for, right? It's just a pile of rocks. But you know what they're used for, right? When the trail, grows thin, like, how do you know where to go? We use cairns, and people have used these for thousands of years. The people that travel first will leave these markers so that the people that come behind them know which way to go. It's a pile of rocks that says, go this way. That's all it is. What I'm most excited about at this season in my life is I feel like this is what I'm doing. This is what I want to do. I don't know how well I'm doing it yet, but this is the kind of work I want to do. I want to leave these markers so that the men coming behind me, and I am now speaking, I know I'm speaking for the other men of Epic, we want to leave these kinds of markers for the men behind us that say, go this way. Be this kind of man. Be a humble man with a broken heart, with a strong shoulder to lean on and lean in. And be the kind of man that's hungry to make the world a better place. Like that, I want to leave those markers. We want to leave those markers. And this is where the conversation becomes more than whether or not you're currently a part of a anti-trafficking organization or initiative or anything like that. We can do this as men every single day, everywhere we show up. And that's not a small thing. That, combined with the work that the survivor community does, that combined with the faithful, if often outgunned law enforcement efforts, that combined with the best policy and legislative frameworks we can think of, that combined with all of those things might actually make a difference. I believe it will. How do we respond to the tragedy of sexual exploitation? How do we keep the most vulnerable safe? Raise safe sons. How do we do that? Become safe men. Men, the damnable business of trafficking thrives. It thrives because of men. It won't be eradicated without better men. I believe that as sure as I'm standing here. Whether or not you engage, I've said this before, but whether or not you engage with any organization or initiative represented here today, you have a part to play. You can make your life a marker so that younger men that come after you will know, and your life will speak it, go this way. So as we close, I want to ask you to indulge me. I spent 30 years as a pastor before I started this work, so I'm going to ask all of the men to stand right now. You don't have to say anything, just stand. So gentlemen, would you stand to receive a benediction? May you see yourself for who you truly are. The bad, yes, and the good. May your heart break for the world that you live in. May your heart break. May that humility and empathy make your shoulders strong for the long work ahead. May you always hunger for a world where everyone flourishes. Amen and thank you.
All right, first question, did everybody get a canvas bag? Okay, if you did not, go out to the front and get it by the door. We are joined again by Lisa Manyon. I know she was up here yesterday checking in with you guys, making sure that you could be disruptors for life by practicing good self-care. And so we're really excited to have her back for this session. She's going to kick off the whole afternoon, which is going to be totally different and totally cool. And there's no one better to do that than Lisa. So thank you, Lisa.
Thank you. It's my honor. It's so great to see everyone here today. I am so excited that all of you disruptors have returned. And we're going to talk again today about you and about your influence, because that's what we all have here. So, did you practice self-care last night? I know one of our presenters did the fun online poll. She's far more tech savvy than I will ever be, probably. And so I know a lot of you did, and I'm glad, because it's so important to really settle into yourself after you've been participating in something as important as this. Because we have to fortify ourselves and we have to build ourselves up in order to give back. So I just want to acknowledge each of you for being here. It's so incredible to see everyone here in the office, in the audience. This is sort of my office, I guess. So we're going to do some self-celebration. Because you all showed up again, and I know that not everyone did, some people didn't make it back, and it's a heavy topic, I get that, but this shows your commitment and your dedication and your resilience and your ability to come together as a community to really face hard topics. So the fact that you're here says a lot about you. You can give yourself a hug or a high five, or your table mates if you're comfortable with touch, completely up to you, but I want you to just celebrate what a big commitment it's been here to be with us for these 2 days. It's a big thing. And we're going to go a little bit deeper and celebrate each of you even more. We want to talk about your unique gifts and the talents that you have, and what those gifts are. And sometimes we don't always think about that, right? We don't always. I don't know about you. I'm just going to call myself out. I am my own worst critic. I'm harder on myself than anyone else. And so to pause and think about, what are those unique gifts that we have? It's really, really important. And before we dive into all of that, this is a very important message. I want you to let this sink in. You are worthy because you are. Period. You don't have to do a lot of really amazing, incredible things. You were placed on this planet because you have inherent worth in every single thing that you do. I first heard this quote, and it was a quote from Neale Donald Walsh at one of his spiritual retreats. And it really struck me because it made me stop and think about how hard I'd been on myself and how we sometimes are always striving to accomplish the next thing or to do all of these things outside of ourselves that really have no impact on the worth we have as an individual, because the truth is we are worthy because we are. So thank you for being here. And with that, we're going to take a little bit of action, and it's going to be a lot of fun, actually. I'm going to ask you to pull out your phones again as well. So what we're going to do this time is we're going to reach out to some people because we're going to be doing some exercises to identify our gifts. And if, like me, you don't always know what those are because you're sometimes on autopilot or you just take what you do for granted or it comes naturally, or sometimes maybe it's a challenge to do things, but there's always something that we're doing or some gifts that we have that our friends and our family and those people that are in our sacred spheres of influence see that we don't see. So what I'm going to ask you to do is take a peek at the screen. We're going to text up to 5 people in our phone. And you can use this as a guideline. I'm going to skip ahead here in a moment and there'll be an actual script for you. But get that out, open up your texting app, and think about at least 1 to 5 people that you can send a text message to get some insight on your gifts. And here's a pro tip. When I pull the script up, you can edit it and you can modify it as needed, and you can also copy and paste that text so you don't have to sit there attempting to retype it. And why do I say that? I've done that myself before and thought, wow, I could have saved some time. So let's go ahead and do that real quickly. And what's going to happen? Well, you're going to send this text, let people know you're at a conference and that you're identifying your unique gifts. Ask what 3 words they might use to describe you, or some things that they think you're really good at. And ask if they can get back to you ASAP, because I'm going to have you identifying some of these on your own here in a moment. But it's always good to get that outside reinforcement and that reflection back, because sometimes we just don't see our gifts. And I know for a fact that each of you in this room has a very unique gift. You're here because you have compassionate hearts and an interest in community and a dedication to change. And right there's some things you can write down. So let's go ahead and have you, oh goodness, did I just, there we go. Send those texts. We're going to actually start a little bit of music here in a minute. And let me know if it's okay to move on from that or if you still need the script. I don't want to move ahead too quickly for anyone, so. It looks like you've got that. Nope. Oh, sorry. Going back. Okay. Keep me on track, people. Once you've sent the texts, and while we're waiting for some responses, we'll be pulling out our I'm a Disruptor journal. And inside the journal, you will be asked to write those gifts and those talents and those things that you can share with the world to contribute. So I'll give us a little bit more time to get those scripts typed in so you can copy and paste and text away. We said to use to send it up to 5 people, and there's a little bit of a fun fact. I call it the Fabulous 5 or the Fantastic 5 because there's 5 people that I know of that I can count on in one hand, that I can reach out to at any given time. And not everyone has that, and I want you to know that it's taken a long time to develop that. And so even if you start with 1, perfectly fine, because it takes time to build those relationships, and we've all met new people here, and maybe we're going to get a little bit closer because we're all here to come together for this common cause. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next screen now. So go ahead and you can keep texting and copying and pasting and doing what you need to do. And let's start looking at your gifts, the things you know you're really good at. All of those things that you contribute to in the world. And the things, they're just, they're skills, they're talents, and sometimes you might even not even think that they're that big of a deal, but I assure you they are. So as you are thinking about this, we also have some journal prompts for you. I'm going to go ahead and put those up. So as we're waiting for those texts to come in, here are some journal prompts so you can start thinking about when the last time was that you were really proud of yourself? When did I feel really helpful? What do I love doing that I am really good at? What are my gifts and how can I contribute to the world? And how do I want to give back and make an impact? What are my values and what's really important to me? And what did my friends say about me during the text activity? What surprised me about that and about what my friends said? So we're going to take a few minutes and play some music to allow you to go into these journal prompts. I see some people taking pictures of them. I'll leave them up for a while too, but you might want to snap a picture of them on your phone and keep them for later. If you're not a super fast writer, that's totally fine. And we're going to start that music, and we're going to give you a few minutes to journal, and then we're going to move on to really kind of harvesting those journal entries to pull out some of those gifts. As you're jotting down some of your thoughts around that, know you'll have time to journal more about this and more deeply go into this more deeply as you're processing everything that we have heard and absorbed during the conference. We're going to keep things moving because we have several really cool activities for you, okay? And we're going to take action again. And this time what I want you to do, and we're just going to take a couple minutes for this, is when you are writing in your journal, think about some of those talents that really struck out to you and you thought, wow, that's a really cool thing that I do, and I could be using this to help others. What might that be? What does that look like? Because we're going to take some of your essence words and we're going to create something really fun for you. And this is where the actual canvas bags come into play. So it is time to create. Grab that bag that you were gifted, and inside the bag you're going to find a couple of really cool things. You're going to find a box of crayons, and we're going to want you to use those crayons. So pull that out first. And you're probably going to have to empty your bag, by the way, because you will be drawing on your bag, just so you know. And you'll actually be able to see all your great goodies that are in there. I guess we probably should have let you know you needed to empty your bag in advance, but now you know. So on the screen you will see there are some ideas that we came up with for you to look at in case you didn't identify your own perfect gifts and unique gifts that you can borrow if you'd like. And what we're going to do is we're going to have you start coloring on your bags and decorating your bag with your gifts. You can doodle, you can write down key phrases, you can do whatever you want. And I want to tell you the significance. First of all, these bags are reusable. And when you draw on them with your crayons, you'll be able to actually You'll be able to follow the instructions, and when you get home, you can iron that in so that it's more permanent. And you can use these bags in a variety of ways. And I know it sounds maybe kind of silly. Some of you are kind of holding back. I don't see you doing it. But there's something very important about using tactile skills to anchor in information. And your gifts are some of the most important pieces of you that likely do not always get the acknowledgement that they deserve. So be sure to write them down. I'm going to go back just briefly to that list. You know, in case you didn't come up with some ideas, there's knitting, making people feel welcome, musicians. I mentioned tech skills earlier. There's all kinds of things that you could be doing. You might be good at paperwork. You might be able to give someone a ride. You might be able to, I don't know, cook or prepare some meals. There's so many things that you can do. You might be good at finances. I love the numbers people in the room. I'm not one of them. And the welding, maybe you're a welder. I'm not one of those either, but hey, that comes in handy. You might be able to build code or proofread. There's so many things. There's so many gifts. So go ahead and just practice on your bags, put some information in there, and I want to tell you something else about these bags. These bags were donated by none other than the amazing and the incredible Janai, aka Grandma Boom, who is at booth 1. And these reusable bags are used for a bunch of different things. I'd love to see them all decorated and see a bunch of you locals at the local farmers market with them so we could say, hey, I know you. I know where that bag came from. But beyond that, Janai is able to provide these bags to your organization. So if you have an organization that wants to do some type of an event that would include often children, because she does a lot of work with children, decorating the bags and learning about recycling and having things being reusable, go and see her at booth number 1 because she can get you those bags for your organizations, and they are free of charge. So talk to her more about that in depth. She's doing really incredible work there. Okay, so keep decorating. Some of you are doing it, and some of you are resisting, and that's okay. I'm not gonna publicly call you out. I'm just gonna observe from here. And we've got some artists in the room, so I'm excited to see what comes up. I'm going to color mine later because I have to stand here and converse with all of you. But I think it's really, really important. And while we're doing this, you know, I just want to again thank all of the sponsors here, everyone that made this possible. I want to again thank Deer Creek Vineyards for donating their resources to help us gift books yesterday. We are all coming together as a community to do what we can do. And the fact that you're back today after some really heavy-duty information yesterday, again, I just want to celebrate each of you. I want to celebrate you and really let it sink in of how important it is that you're here. It's amazing. You're all amazing, and I'm honored. I'm just blown away also by the caliber of people in this room and the power of the speakers. And Tom's session was incredibly amazing. I have so many men that I want to share that with, so thank you. Thank you for all of that. As you're decorating your gifts, just be sure to give yourself a lot of love. Celebrate those gifts. Or I should say, as you're decorating your bag with those gifts. I realize I left some words out. That happens sometimes. And just know that we're going to now put those gifts to use. It's time to connect those unique gifts that you have in this world with the incredible nonprofit organizations that we have in the room. So we're going to give you some opportunity to do just that, to move around the room, to take care of business. And what I mean by that is talk to each of the people in the room, talk to the organizations that are here about what they're really doing, and think about, you know, maybe how could I donate some time or give someone a ride or help write a press release, or I don't know. There's so many different things, and we won't know what they need unless we go and ask them. So that's really important too. Okay, everyone, we're going to start wrapping up our creativity and doodling because we have some more fun things for you to be doing. But I want you to take a moment to reflect on those gifts that you identified once again. And I can't reiterate this too many times because our gifts are gifts from the Creator to us to give back to the community. And so I can't wait to see how, by identifying these gifts and getting reflections back from the people that you can count on, I don't know, how you'll choose to use them in our community, what you might choose to do to help us with this amazing cause.
I know I have been up here a lot over the last 2 days, but everything's kind of culminating to this moment where we're going to pull together a little bit of everything that you guys have learned. And I've been teasing that I'm going to tell my story, but it didn't mean to be like suspenseful or anything. At first, it was just my way of saying, I'm not going to tell you the thing now because I'm going to tell you the thing later, and now it's later. How are you guys feeling after all of this? Yeah? If you're feeling a lull, I see a lot of brownies on the table still. And if you don't eat them, I'm probably going to eat them. All right, this is our last session here today. Like I said, to pull all of this together, and this is my presentation on overcoming challenges and making an impact. So my story starts with a broken heart. Aww. How many of you have had a broken heart in your life? I know you know what I'm talking about. So I was married, and I thought it was forever. I knew that my marriage was hard, but I thought that marriage was hard because that's the narrative you kind of always hear, right? So I was going along, living my life here in the Rogue Valley. I was a photographer, photographing women, when I found out that my husband was having an affair. And there was some serious betrayal trauma that happened to me for that. And when I confronted him, he said that not only was it true, but that he wanted to be with her. And that was excruciating. And I felt like I had hit rock bottom. And I went to a counselor. And within the first hour, she told me, actually, Lauren, your ex-husband or your husband at the time is actually very emotionally abusive. And I thought, no, I mean, I know he's like angry and it's really hard and difficult, but he's not abusive. He's never hit me. I didn't understand what emotional abuse was. And she recommended that I read some literature. And I started picking up some books and reading some articles about narcissistic abuse. And then I really hit my rock bottom because I thought, oh my gosh, this is how I've been living. This explains everything that I've been going through. But then over here, I had this really difficult job of reconciling myself, this confident, educated, well-traveled, cultured, intelligent woman who came from a great home, reconciling her with a person who had been experiencing abuse. And I thought, how the frick did I get here? And that's when I became obsessed with this notion that nobody's exempt from abuse. It doesn't matter if you think you're smarty pants. There are people out there who see your vulnerabilities and who will make their way in, which is what we've learned here today. And what I learned from my situation is that it wasn't that dissimilar from how traffickers target their victims. It almost always starts with emotional abuse before physical abuse. Because if you just hit someone on day one, they would leave. But it's not that simple. And so I was literally crushed. I had to figure out how I was going to navigate this new life, newly divorced. And I also had to figure out what is my identity? Like, who am I? Because I'm not who I thought I was. And I thought of this question. can you heal a broken heart through helping others? And this sounds very noble, but I'm going to be honest. I was desperate. I was so hurt, and I was in so much pain. I thought, maybe if I can meet people who have experienced abuse and who have survived it, maybe they can teach me how to do it. And so I had this idea. I already ride motorcycles. I'm a professional photographer of women. What if I could get on my bike and travel around and meet people who have experienced abuse? And again, maybe they can teach me how I can heal from it. And I thought, okay, well, maybe I'll check out some domestic violence shelters. And this was like, this was very naive of me. You can't just walk up to a domestic violence shelter, first of all. And second of all, you can't just put someone in front of your camera and not know what level of healing they've had. And I could have re-traumatized, it's just crazy. It was a crazy idea. And a couple of people in the community said to me, well, have you ever heard of Rebecca Bender? She's a local survivor of human trafficking. And I was like, trafficking? Like in Cambodia? Right? I had no awareness of what this looks like and how it happens. And someone introduced me to Rebecca, and she was very gracious to take a phone call from me, total stranger, boudoir photographer at that. And we had a conversation, and within about 10 minutes, she explained to me those cycles of abuse. And I learned that, wow, what was happening in my marriage was again, what happens with traffickers. And then she started to tell me more about it. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I'm looking for. This is my mission, right? And I'm just months out of my situation. My situation blew up in November. By March, I had this idea. By June, I was on the phone with Rebecca Bender. We decided to partner together. And by September, I was on the road. It was crazy. So what we decided to do was reach out to her network of survivors. And I know she told you guys yesterday quite a bit about the Elevate Academy, her online school. We have some graduates in the room, you can tell. So she has this network. At the time, this was 2016, she had 100 graduates. That's how far they've come. And so she sent out an email to her entire network of survivors around the country and said, this is Lauren, she's a photographer, she might be riding through your city, and if you'd like to take us up on the offer of free professional photography, send us an email. And it was overwhelming. We had to cap it at 40. And so I decided to go on the road, like I said, in September, and do 10,000 miles around the country and photograph and meet 40 survivors. I did this on my Ducati Monster, lovingly referred to as the Monster. Real creative, I know. And that's what I did. I will tell you guys, this is probably the most impractical bike to go any amount of long distance on, but I did it. So I started here at home. It was really cool. We had an event at SOU, and we had a great turnout. Some people who were there at that very first trip are here today. Raise your hand if you were there. We've got a couple longtime supporters. Thank you, guys. And from here, I went north, cut across to Coeur d'Alene, all the way over to Michigan, through the Upper Peninsula, back down to Indiana, over to New York City, all the way down the coast to Jacksonville and St. Augustine, Florida, up to Memphis, back down through Texas, through New Mexico. I visited my family, stayed with my grandma, and then I came up the California coast. Here's a picture of me on the road. So just so you know, when I'm on the road, I'm camping for the most part. Again, very impractical. They make adventure bikes for this, but who needs that when you got an Italian sport bike? And enough luggage to sleep on. It was an incredible journey. I hit so many states. I went by myself. That's something that surprises people a lot. And they say, well, don't you want to ride with people? And at the time, I didn't. I don't usually ride with people, just my dad. But now I know that I have to go at it alone because I'm meeting survivors, and I'm not going to show up with a whole entourage of strangers, right? The journey, oh, that's when I traded in my wheels for something a little different. Pennsylvania, Florida. This wasn't a very arduous journey. I rode through heat, rain. It was freezing. It was hot. When I hit Florida, guess what else also hit Florida? Hurricane Matthew. I broke down a couple of times. My back hurt from being on the tent and then on the bike and then back in the tent and then on the bike. But I made it all the way back home. It was a pretty incredible journey. Over 2 months on the road. Thank you. You know, but the highlight was really meeting the survivors. Again, I had met Rebecca Bender in like June and did not know what trafficking was. And then a couple of months later, I'm on the road and I'm meeting survivors face to face. One thing to know about the survivor portraits that I do, the portraits are a gift, which means I do not ask for anything in return. Specifically, they are not obliged to tell me their story. It's not an interview. Survivors have been exploited commercially. It would be really weird to then ask them to say, I'll take your photo, but you have to tell me your story, right? So this is something that we learned as trauma-informed people. We ask for nothing in return. They don't even have to sign a model release. Nobody even knows they have to do a photo shoot. Quite a bit of survivors, quite a few of them, have signed model releases. You're going to see some of the photos, and quite a few of them have shared their stories with me, which is beautiful and a true honor. But these survivors come from all walks of life. I photographed male survivors, and they said things like, people don't realize boys are trafficked too. We haven't talked about that a lot at this conference, but it's true. Hopefully photo shoots like this can change that narrative. The other thing these photo shoots are is a celebration. If you Google human trafficking, what comes up? Photos of people in bondage with hands over their mouths, they're crying, they're chained to radiators. That's not the image of survivors I know. That's a massive misrepresentation. This is what survivors look like. A lot of these survivors are leaders. They have their own organizations. They're doing policy work, prevention work, restoration work. Until this photo shoot, the only photo I had of myself was from when I was in exploitation and my mugshot. Most of them have criminal records. Rebecca spoke about that. Tina spoke about that. The LGBTQ community, heavily affected by this issue. These are just really beautiful people, I have to tell you. I heard things like, I never knew my eyes sparkled like that. Some of these pictures you might recognize as the ones outside. They're some of the ones that I did on my very first journey. Wendy Barnes, she actually wrote the book that Rebecca said was so good. It was like the best written book, you know, the best writing and everything. That's Wendy Barnes. She wrote that book. Gosh, what's the title of that book? No, I forgot. I'm sorry. What's that? No one? Okay. Life Continues. Thank you. And Life Continues by Wendy Barnes. Some more nonprofit leaders for you. So my dear friend Jessa, I have always felt that I wore my exploitation like a sign on my forehead. Now I can see myself as beautiful. This is something I really heard from a lot of survivors, that they don't feel like the way that, like how we see them. They feel like judgment and their trauma and what they've experienced, they feel like all of that just shines through on the outside. And with my camera, I'm able to show them that actually this is you, because I don't use lights. I'm a natural light photographer. I have one lens. I don't even have a zoom, so sometimes I'm all up in their face. Some of the survivors here know what I'm talking about. We don't do professional hair and makeup. You guys recognize Christine? Being trafficked as a child meant I never felt valued. With Lauren, I felt valued and celebrated. I have photographed Christine like 4 or 5 times, because every time we hang out, I'm like, let's do a photo shoot. And it's been so fun to watch the evolution of her as she grows in her career as well. There's another figure you might recognize, Tina. Some of these photos were on that first journey. Some of them have been on subsequent journeys. So all in all, that journey was pretty incredible. I did 10,118 miles. I mean, who's counting? But we actually, when I left, we thought that it was going to be 9,000 miles because I mapped it out and we made all these like signs and posters, and then it was not 9,000 miles. On that road trip in 2016, I met and photographed almost 40 survivors. We raised almost $60,000 for Rebecca Bender Initiative. From Facebook, from you guys, and from some of Rebecca's network as well. And any guesses on how many speeding tickets I got? Zero. That's my mom's favorite slide. How many did I deserve? That's not an appropriate question. You know there's like nobody in Montana, right? So since that time, I've gone on to photograph almost 100 survivors. We've raised over $400,000 for survivor-led organizations. We launched our online school, training and educating community members just like you guys, and we've had 25 graduates of that. It was really incredible to be able to use my passion for a purpose, right? Like, who would have thought that you could use your motorcycle and your camera to do something like this? When I came home from the road, it was so cool. I felt like a celebrity. I got invited to galas. This was a Rebecca Bender's gala. The survivors gave me an award. It was so moving. I got invited on YouTube channels, on podcasts. Tom and I got invited to the Sturgis rally. I was all over the news, doing all kinds of things. I got picked to be a judge at motorcycle events. People wrote songs about me. I got invited to do the Rogue Valley Dancing with the Stars, okay? And then I won Rogue Valley Dancing with the Stars. Another great charity. A highlight, we got on CNN. Wow. Pretty cool. And another real highlight was I asked Keanu Reeves on a date. We filmed this whole really cool, ridiculous proposal video asking Keanu Reeves to be my date to the Rebecca Bender Gala. Local media picked it up, and then national media picked it up. And, you know, Keanu didn't say yes, but he also didn't not say yes. So, you know, you never know. So you're telling me there's a chance? It was pretty incredible. I have a lot to be proud of. But I also want to share with you the deeper truth. And the deeper truth is, while that was all very, very cool, and like I said, I'm very proud of those accomplishments and the things and the publicity, and being on the news is so fun, and you know, that's all really, really great stuff. But it was also very hard. As a photographer, I have a lot of friends who are also photographers. And while I was on the road, my good friend John David Pittman from Little Rock, Arkansas, had me stop by his studio. And he's the one who like says yes ma'am to me, and I'm like younger than him. Those country guys. He had me sit down in his studio, and he just said one question to me: how's the ride going? And this was me in that moment. I was in a lot of pain on this journey. There was a lot of consequences for me. I wrecked my body on that trip. When I came home, I had an overuse injury in both of my arms from being in this position for so long, day after day after day. So you can drive 10,000 miles, but when you ride 10,000 miles, it takes just so much longer because I only have 3 gallons in that tank. Again, I'm not saying it's practical motorcycle, So I had to pull over every 100 miles, and every 100 miles you have to take your helmet off, and you have to get the gas and go to the bathroom. It just takes longer. So I was on the road for a long, long time, and I messed up my arms. I had some sort of a thing going on in there, that little black thing. And the doctor said, all right, well, why don't we try to give you cortisone shots in both your elbows, which I thought, okay, great. A lot of people do those. Not if you have an allergy to cortisone, which I did and did not know about. So the cortisone then atrophied all the fat and tissue in both my elbow joints. So that's not like a weird growth on my elbow. That's like what your elbow bone looks like when all the fat around it is gone. So you know when you bump your funny bone and you're like, dang, this was like my life for like 24 hours a day. So I couldn't wear sweaters. I had to sleep like a vampire. And one of the worst things about this was now I couldn't ride my motorcycle. So I had an identity crisis at the end of my marriage, and then I put my whole identity into the girl who rode 10,000 miles across the country, who now can't even ride a motorcycle, and now has a motorcycle charity that she can't even participate in. So my identity crisis that I thought I fixed with a Band-Aid came back to bite me. So that question of can you heal a broken heart through helping others really is like, can you be an absolute dumpster fire and help others? Because that's what I was. If you guys aren't familiar with that term, it's just like, you're a mess. Like, I was a mess. So can you be a mess and help others? Yeah, I did it. I'm living proof that you can do that. But at what cost? I didn't just have the atrophy in my elbows. I was 109 pounds. For context, that's 15 pounds lighter than I am right now. I was having panic attacks, insomnia. When I did sleep, I would have nightmares. I had memory loss. My friend called me one day and he said, I'm having a hard time logging into my website. And I was like, oh, dang, man, that's like so frustrating. And he's like, well, can you help me? And I'm like, what? I had built my friend an entire website. It was basic, but it probably took me 3 days. And about 7 months later, I had zero recollection that I built this website. Like, I was not okay. My family's here. They remember. And then again, I had that loss of identity. So am I a disruptor for life? Absolutely. I know that I am in this for the long haul. We've talked about the long haul. I'm a disruptor for life. But I couldn't do it if I was gonna continue down that path. And so we're gonna ask of you guys to be disruptors for life. You're here, you've learned about this issue. We want you in this fight for life. We know that the victims and the survivors need you, but we also need you to be healthy. So today you saw the agency red carpet, and after this session, we're gonna ask you for 100% participation. And I'm gonna explain that more, but basically you guys are gonna stand up and go to the tables, and we're gonna ask that every single person here participate by doing something for one of these local agencies. But I don't want you guys to do that at the detriment of your own health. And so that's what I really want to talk to you guys about today. Beyond the journey, beyond what I learned from that journey, how do you overcome challenges and make an impact without hurting yourself? I've actually come up with a 3-step process, so don't worry. These are things that I learned earlier in life and then after the road, but I've finally just been able to pull them all together. The first way to overcome a challenge and make an impact is to camp with coyotes. So this is a good story that comes from my dad. He's back there, but I love this picture of my dad. I don't know if you guys can see the face he's making over there. So this is a story that my dad told me when I was about maybe 13, 14 years old. And it's a story that happened to him and one of our family friends, Lee Duncan. So my family's like very much from the West, if you can't tell. My brother is here too, and he's named after Lee Duncan. He's a dear family friend, and he was best friend to both of my grandfathers. And my dad, around this age, went to go visit Lee Duncan in his trailer house in the middle of nowhere in New Mexico. And they're talking in the kitchen, and my dad kind of looks out the kitchen window, and he sees, like, way up in the hills in the boonies, like a campfire. And he's like, Lee, someone's up in the hills, like someone's up in your hills. And Lee kind of looks out the window, and he goes, oh, yeah, that's Jan. Jan was Lee's daughter. And my dad said, well, what's she doing up there? And he said, well, Jan's afraid of coyotes. And so she's camping up there, and she ain't coming home until she ain't afraid of coyotes no more. And my dad said, well, how long has she been up there? 3 days. She was probably 19 at the time. And when my dad recounted this story to me when I was 12, 13, 14, something like that, it profoundly impacted my life. And I thought, you can do that? You can be afraid of something and do something about it? You can actually go camping with your coyotes? And I said coyotes, but cowboys would never say coyotes. It's coyotes. So what are your coyotes? What are the things that you guys are afraid of? The failure? Going to the doctor? Could be a scary one. Mortality? Letting your kids go? Starting a new business? Losing somebody that you love? Public speaking? It's not so bad. Deep water? That's real bad. You're not getting me out there. Judgment of others? What are some of these things that are really holding you back that you have fear of? Being alone? Going to therapy? I'll tell you what it is for me, or what it was for me, and it was being still. That's why in the pinnacle of the worst moment of my life, I decided, I'm gonna go do this thing. Like, who does that? We all do. All of you do it. Being still is one of the hardest things that we can do. For me, it was reaching for my phone a lot. When you go camping with your coyotes, that also means not reaching for the things that you know are not good for you. So is it alcohol? Is it substances? Is it TV? Is it toxic relationships? Is it your cell phone, like it is for me? What are these things that you should not be reaching for when you should try to be still? What are your coyotes? So when you go camping with your coyotes, first, obviously, you have to identify them. Try to be still with them. Might take 3 days up in the hills. But it's that dark soul of the night when you are in a tent and you're so afraid of something and you hear those coyotes howling outside your tent walls. I know you guys have been there. But the more time you can spend there and get right with yourself, the greater chance you're going to have to overcome challenges and make an impact. So in the spirit of Jan Duncan, camp with your coyotes, until you ain't afraid of coyotes no more. That's step one to overcoming challenges and making an impact. Step two, be coachable. How many of you guys played sports growing up? Almost everybody. I like this one for men because a lot of men play sports and they'll always listen to their coach. I had a coach when I was young. That's my bro. We did martial arts growing up, and that was Jody cornering me in one of my competitions. And why I say this about men is that men will always listen to their coaches, but I want you guys to think about learning to cultivate a level of vulnerability outside of the ring, off of the football field, away from the golf course, places where normally you feel very coachable. That's awesome. You know what that feels like. Now try to take that off of the field, out of the ring, etc. We can do this by two things: practicing humility and having courage. Humility to know that we don't know everything. Tom spoke about humility earlier. And also to be able to accept that that's okay that we don't know everything. Courage to be able to ask for guidance. and to display a little bit of vulnerability. It's also very important to remember that coaches and mentors come in all shapes and forms. I'm going to tell you a story about my friend Jocelyn Snow. Jocelyn Snow is a motorcycle personality, I would say. She is an absolute savage on motorcycles. She's an adventure rider. She qualified for the GS Trophy, which is literally the Olympics for adventure riding. On and off road, she did trials in all over the United States to qualify. Then she had to go to South Africa, and her team had to qualify for the actual competition that was in Mongolia. This was the first time that women had ever been included in this competition in 2019, and she made it, and she dominated. What's cool about Jocelyn, though, she rides these enormous bikes. She's 5'1". She can't even friggin' touch the ground. But she has taught herself through technique and practice to be able to be like a ballerina on these things. And she rides circles around, I mean, literally over 99% of motorcyclists in this country. And she tells this story when she gives her talks, that she's been riding motorcycles her whole life. She's owned over 40 motorcycles. She knows bikes. She fixes bikes. She races bikes. She does things like this. She had decided that she wanted the latest model of this bike, the BMW GS. And so she went to her local dealership and she walked in and she said, "I want the new GS." And the sales guy was like, looked at her, right? She's 5'1". For reference, that's an inch shorter than I am. And kind of gave her the runaround. And then went in the back, and then another guy came out and she said, "I want the new GS." And he kind of gave her the same look, and next thing you know, 3 hours pass. And she's like, "Look, are you guys gonna sell me this bike, or what's going on?" And they actually told her, "We can't in good conscience sell you this bike because it's way too big for you." She was devastated. So she stormed out of there. She got in her car. She Googled the next town over and called that dealership. Some guy named Brad or something answered. And she said, "Brad," she said, she was crying, do you have the new GS in stock?" And he said, "Yeah." And she said, "If I came in there with money, would you sell it to me?" He was like, he didn't have context. He was like, "Yeah." So she did. She drove about an hour away and she bought the bike. She got on that bike, she rode all the way to the Arctic Circle and back, came home, qualified for the GS Trophy, did all of this stuff all around the world. Guess what? Now she's famous. Now she's a sponsored BMW rider, and they want her to do an event at her local BMW dealership. She said the guy did not even come out of his office while she did a whole demonstration in the parking lot. My point is, we don't always know who knows what. So who are you discounting in your life? Jocelyn Snow inspired me. I actually rode the Ducati Monster around the country because I thought I was too short to ride anything else. And then I met that woman. And I went out and bought the tallest bike that I could find. This is my new bike, the Ducati Scrambler. And I learned how to ride it. And for the first 2 months, I thought, I'm gonna die, but I did it because she showed me how, and she mentored me. I took that bike on the next journey, and I photographed survivors all the way around Washington and Canada and Utah and et cetera, and I started having survivors sign the front fender. Now there's almost no space left on that bike, right? So who are you discounting? When we talk about being coachable, yeah, our football coach, we're going to listen to him. But who else in our lives is available to teach us something? And are we paying attention to these people? Because trust me, nobody discounts Jocelyn Snow anymore. So in what areas of your life can you be more coachable? Your marriage? Guess what? There's a coach for that. They're called therapists. There's a coach for this. They're actually called business coaches. Parenting, health, relationships, finances, mental health, finding your purpose. Lisa Manyon's in the room. She's real good at helping people find their purpose. Which motorcycle to buy? That didn't get very many laughs. So here's a bonus about being coachable. Coaches and mentors will believe in you when you do not believe in yourself. And you cannot put a price on that. So in being coachable, be sure to ask, who am I discounting? Consider ways to be vulnerable outside the ring, AKA outside your comfort zone. And remember that coaches believe in you when you don't believe in yourself. So what do? We be humble, we be courageous, we be coachable. All right, step 3, to overcoming a challenge and making an impact. Build community. I love this quote. There is no power for change greater than a community discovering what it cares about. Did you guys discover some new things to care about here? Yeah. Talking about community, a key ingredient to community is generosity. So I'm going to tell you another story about a survivor that I photographed in Florida. I rode all the way over there. This was right before the hurricane was going to hit. You'll see Morgan, her photo is outside too. She's an Elevate graduate, and we had an event in Florida, and Rebecca had said, as a graduate, would you mind saying a few words at this event that Lauren's going to do? And so she came up, and we talked about the ride, and we were raising funds, and she told this beautiful story about when you donate to Elevate Academy to support a survivor, you're committing an act of love. It's an act of love, because when you support charity, you're helping someone you will never meet. And particularly for survivors of exploitation, I mentioned this, when they receive something and they aren't asked to give anything back, that heals them. When you support charities, you're committing an act of love. This is a lesson I'm constantly trying to learn from my mom. My mom has been telling me since I was born, unconditional love, unconditional love. And I don't always get it, but I do now, particularly after that quote from Morgan. Every time you tell my mom a story about anything or anybody, she says, well, we'll just lift them up in unconditional love. I'm like, yeah, Mom, okay. But no, now I know. She's had it right all along. Acts of love, lifting people up in unconditional love, giving them things without asking for anything in return, that strengthens communities. That's what you guys are doing here today. So I have a challenge for you. Go camping with your coyotes. Practice being coachable. Build community with acts of love. And you just might be able to overcome challenges, make an impact without harming yourself in the way that I do, because I don't want anybody to do that. That's not sustainable. We've heard that from several speakers today. So in addition to today, you've learned about the issue. Would you agree? Yeah. You've identified your unique abilities through those text messages. Did you guys get some pretty cool text messages back? Some surprising things? I heard someone over here. Like, wow, I never thought about myself that way. You've also heard the needs of your community from our tabling agents. So now, the last step is to take a stand. Now, I mentioned to you guys that I was going to ask for 100% participation. Now's the time. So I'm going to have you guys stand. You can bring your notebooks if you want, so you can have reference on which tables you're going to visit. But we're going to ask you guys, every single one of you in this room is going to do at least one thing at one of these tables. And I know you can do this because some people said just sign up for our newsletter, and I know you can do that. We also haven't asked for $10,000, so can anybody do that? That'd be awesome. Whatever it is, the one thing that you do, we want everybody to do it, because that's how we're going to make a difference in this issue. And I hope that you guys feel empowered at this point, that you can make a difference. And so when you go to a table and you feel a need, the tabling agents are going to ring the little bell. So I hope that you guys can hear in real time change being made in your community. Okay? Ready, break. We're going to have 30 minutes during this section. All right, we have something really special coming up next, and we're calling this the Agency Red Carpet. And I know we've mentioned this multiple times, but the whole reason we're here is to support the organizations, the nonprofits, and the agencies who are doing the work to support our vulnerable populations. When they do the work that they do, I don't know if they always know it, but they are preventing trafficking by supporting people who are in need, foster kids, teen moms, youth. The more that you work with them, the less likely, I'll say, that they will fall into a situation of exploitation. And so again, that's why we're here, to celebrate them. And so you guys have just done an exercise to consider your unique gifts and what are your offerings and in what ways can you help the community. And now you're going to hear the needs. These nonprofits need things. They have openings for volunteer positions. They have funding needs. They have all kinds of things. And they're going to come up here one by one, and they're going to tell you their needs. And I'd like you guys to pull out your journals again and start taking notes. When you see a need on the screen that you feel in your heart, you can fill that need, write it down. If you know somebody who you think may be able to fill that need, write it down and make a note. And then after this, we're going to do another activity where we connect your unique offerings to their needs. Got it? And I forgot to ask for a mic stand up here. There might be one up here already. That's my bad. Are you guys ready? They have practiced this, you guys. They each have 2 minutes, and they have it down. Thank you, Drew. Just put it. Okay, I'll let you do it. Thank you, Drew. Okay, without further ado, we're going to start. Yes. Okay. Let's welcome our first tabling agency.
Superkidpower.org. For 48 years, Tina would say, I've done the long and the deep. I have developed a special program for children starting at the age of 3, teaching how the mind, body, emotions work together as a system with breathing and all the triggers, all the emotions, etc., etc. Here's a success story. Second grader says, Saturday night, I was on the bridge with my parents and they were fighting really bad. I knew that they did drugs. This was in winter. The water underneath was dark. It was dark outside. And he said, they accidentally knocked me off the bridge. He grabbed on a limb and he was not knowing what to do until he remembered. He said, I remember what you taught us last week when we drummed and we marched and we sang. Breathe, think, and make a good choice. Do it with me. Breathe, think, and make a good choice. He saved his own life and he empowered himself and he looked completely different after that. So that's the kind of thing that is happening, starting with the age of 3. 85% of the brain develops by the age of 5. We need to get these skills into children at a young age. So I use objects in the environment to get them inside their bodies, minds, and emotions and spirits. So instead of saying, take a deep breath, I show them, do that in your belly button. That's where it's good. Okay. I also work with homeless and poverty every week, and at Christmas this last year I provided for 131 poverty and homeless that were in need of food and objects and things for basic needs, and I'm the Christmas fairy. Okay, I'm done. So it's self-care, it's self-love, 48 years and counting. Thank you so much. I have lots of needs, always. I'm a professional beggar. We want to protect, we've got to do prevention. That's how we're going to solve this. Sorry, Lauren.
Hello, my name is Erin, and I'm on the board of Ride My Road. Ride My Road is a local anti-human trafficking organization, which you all have met since we are the co-host of this conference with ANP Conferences. You're about to hear Lauren's story. Is anyone excited? And more about Ride My Road. Sorry. In addition to an online university, we co-host conferences around the country, build motorcycles, and give them away to raise funds for survivors. Lauren also goes out on the road on her motorcycle and photographs survivors of human trafficking. If you haven't seen that already, you can see the portraits out in the lobby. We are excited to announce that this October, Lauren is going back out on the road. And she will ride from Washington State all the way down to Texas and will photograph survivors along the route and in all the states that she rides through. On this journey, Ride My Road will raise $100,000 for the Elevate Academy from the Rebecca Bender Initiative. Today, Ride My Road is asking for 15 people. We need 15 people, hopefully in this room, to donate $100 to help kick off the next cross-country campaign. Send a survivor to school, so stop by table 2 to donate. Thank you so much.
All right, hey everybody, my name is Jenny Lippold. I work with the EPIC Project. You've heard from several of my colleagues, seen many of them, so I don't feel like I have to repeat so much, but we are in the game of ending demand, right? We're gonna end demand, disrupt the forces that perpetuate it, and nurture a generation of men who are just not going to buy sex. That's what we're gonna do. We serve this mission through initiatives ranging from digital cyber patrols, which you heard a lot about from Justin, disrupting the point of sale, rehabilitating buyers, supporting survivors and survivor-led initiatives, leading preventative campaigns in schools, in our communities, and in general, promoting men's relational health with opportunities to belong. We educate via online content like blogs, podcasts, papers, books, engagements, and through our networks. You can come see us at booth 3. I don't know if my past people have been saying, I'm booth 3. Gal before me, booth 2, booth 1, so we'll keep on going. We currently are in need of men who want to participate, or any men you may know who might want to participate. Come see us, get connected. Anyone looking at ending gendered violence, right? We want to hear from you guys. We're also seeking technically savvy individuals to assist us with some really awesome digital initiatives. So if you have those skills, I would love to hear from you. Thank you guys. Right on. 2 minutes? Ha.
Hi everyone, I'm with My Friends Are Not For Sale. My name is Ashton Frenendal, and I help students learn about grooming and exploitation. So we equip students, their communities, staff, and counselors with the tools and resources they need so they know how to protect themselves and their community. And we work with multiple high schools in Washington State, but back in September, we had the opportunity to help a middle school create their own My Friends Are Not For Sale club. Since time is limited, I just want to share with you something a 13-year-old shared with me and their experience with My Friends Are Not For Sale. They shared, I feel like I belong here, and I'm so glad to be a part of something that's so important, and I feel like I've learned so much from just being here. That's from a 13-year-old. So not only are we bringing students awareness and education, we're giving them a sense of belonging and a community. So if you're someone who wants to give students the tools, resources, and a community that they need to not only protect themselves, but their friends, please come to our booth, booth 4. We would love to chat with you. And I just want to add to all the survivors who are here today and who have attended, the EPIC Project and My Friends Are Not For Sale would love to gift each of you with a piece of our apparel for free. So please come to our booth, pick out whatever you'd like, and if we don't have a sizing option, we'll take your name and contact information so we can give that to you guys. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Robin Miller. I'm putting the script down, Lauren, because I think I'll do better this way and under 2 minutes. I'm representing 2 organizations from table 5.5. The first is Empower Her Network. That is my day job. I am the Northwest Advocate. I've been doing direct service with survivors for almost 10 years, particularly in the crisis phases. So still in the life, coming out of it, even some prevention work. This job allows me to meet survivors out of that crisis and in the middle part where so many resources are not available. We support both labor and sex trafficking survivors in the Northwest, right now, Oregon and Washington. We can help with things like gaps where financial aid can't cover in their tuition. Licenses for new jobs. We support people in building a business of their own. Main focus is on housing, education, and employment. What we need from you, what I would ask of the folks down here, is just building relationships with the direct service providers, relationships with therapists who might be working with survivors. We build an MOU together, memorandum of understanding. You do the vetting. I don't even ever have to ask the story. It always says, we chop it up as survivors oftentimes, but that's not the focus. The focus is on the end goal. So if you're interested in partnering or learning more and you have a card, I don't have a card, you can click our QR code to go to our website and reach out to me. Or leave your card and I'll reach out to you. Okay. How many minutes is that? Okay. Oh, go off? I'm coming. Yeah. Oh, there you go. Okay, I'm glad I did it in the right order, 5.5. My name is Robin Miller. I am a sex trade survivor. I am a co-founder of the Sex Trade Survivor Caucus. It was originally called the Northwest Survivor Alliance. We are a group of survivors now nationally that have come together to address the policies that are around the sex trade and that are coming in, Oregon, sorry. If you didn't know, 2 years ago, there was what's it called on the ballot? A ballot initiative to fully decriminalize the sex trade in Oregon, which would mean that not only the body, my body bought and sold would be decriminalized, which I support. But I do not support the decriminalization of men who buy sex or people who sell other people for sex or brothel keeping. In Washington State right now, we just passed some legislation around strip clubs. While Portland, Oregon is a mecca, it is more strip clubs per capita than anywhere in the country. Washington State had 11. I can imagine this might grow. But we step in and we address those issues. We speak from a lens of lived experience. Why our voice, I meet people where they're at, people who are in the sex trade and they say they want to be there. I support those people. I support their voices. I do not support the promotion of a trade that is it's destructive and all to everybody. You've heard all weekend how harmful this is. My voice, I have been before, I have been in it, I've been living out of it for over 25 years, and it's lived in my body. So that's why I will not, and in the bodies of my children, and my family, and my peers. So that's why I won't sign up for a full decrim policy. And what we need for you is like-minded constituents to join. As an ally, you can sign up on my pad and paper, old school, name and email. We do have another QR code for that website for any survivors who are interested in membership. Just put your information in there and we will reach out to you.
Okay, hello again. Jordan Pease. I'm the director of Roe Valley Metaphysical Library here in Ashland. RVML is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We're located just down the street, 1 mile from here. Open today till 6. RVML's mission is to provide easy access to information that inspires, heals, and connects, with an emphasis on solutions to humanity's meta-challenges. RVML's lending library of books, audiobooks, and DVDs has grown to be among the largest of its kind in the world. In addition to our lending library, we also operate a bookstore and a media exchange with titles on all subjects. All subjects are represented there. We really say there's truly something for everybody, not just spirituality and metaphysics. And we also have a community meeting room which can seat up to 40 people for lectures, classes, and small group events, which is very easy to book online. Ask Barbara Chicarico. It's 3 clicks, right? For about 20 years now, we've produced a free admission lecture series every Tuesday, 7 p.m. Also a monthly video and discussion series with Marla Estes called called thank you, Building Bridges, Bridging Divides, thank you, Learning to Depolarize Our Relationships, also free admission. How many people know Marla Estes? I think you'll all agree what a tremendous facilitator she is for these kinds of discussions. She just does it from such a beautiful place. In 2015, we established the Architects of the New Paradigm Conference Series. Sorry, I should take my glasses off. Architects of the New Paradigm Conference Series, producing large annual events in various West Coast cities, including the recent February 3rd Southern Oregon Homelessness Summit organized with Cass St. Clair, and that was just February 3rd here in this venue, and also the Disruptor Summit that we're at here today. Our web portal it's easy to remember, Rogue Valley Metaphysical Library, so that's rvml.org. I'm getting the sign from Lauren. Our needs are up on the screen there. So I will resign my time. Thank you all for being here today. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Christina Petrone. I'm the program manager with CASA of Jackson and Josephine County. How many of you know what a CASA is? I see some CASAs in the house. Can you raise your hand if you're a court-appointed special advocate, or you have been? I know that some of you come from other counties and are here. Thank you for your work. As you know, we are court-appointed special advocates. We're volunteers. We train people like you to be that voice in court for children in the foster care system. We visit them once a month, sometimes more than once a month. We are sometimes that only consistent person in their lives. And our job is to go to court and tell the judge how this child is doing, if he or she is thriving or not thriving, what their needs are. And to, as Justin and our other speakers and Tina said, to be alongside these children in these some trauma-filled journeys. When a child enters a child welfare system, we are mandated by law to appoint them a CASA. Well, we've got over 100 kids on our wait lists that don't have a CASA. And when there is a CASA on the case, that child is 98% less likely to experience re-abuse, to be abused again, because we are that extra set of eyes and ears on that case. So I want to just briefly tell you a story about a CASA who is actually here. She became a CASA 2 years ago for this child. She was 3 at the time, and had to be moved from her foster home to her second foster home. So new home, new foster parents, new school. And at the time, Lena thought she wasn't really making an impact. Well, she had created a bond with this child. And so when she went to visit her in her new foster home, the foster mom opened the door and she came running to her CASA because she knew who she was, and it was the one consistent person in her life. That child got removed one more time to a new home, and you know what she said to her new foster parents? My CASA will be calling you, and she'll be here. My people will be calling you. We need volunteers. Come see us at booth 7. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Susan Moen. I'm with the Jackson County Sexual Assault Response Team. We are a nonprofit that serves survivors of sexual violence. We provide immediate hospital care for folks who have experienced sexual assault, domestic violence, and strangulation. We provide support groups, and we have a resource specialist who helps survivors access crucial resources and navigate systems. We also provide violence prevention education in our schools, kindergarten through 12th grade, including parent nights for parents, and to community businesses and individuals. All of our services are completely free. To care for the survivors in our community, we need donations, like everyone here. We also need tangible resources for our clients, such as gas cards, gift cards for food and essential needs, phones, and minutes. Because of confidentiality rules, we don't use volunteers in our direct service work, but we very much count on the work of volunteers and community members to help spread awareness of our services and how to access them. I encourage you to learn about what resources Jackson County SART can offer survivors, so when someone identifies you as a safe person and discloses, you can respond. I'm so sorry that happened to you. Thank you for telling me. What can I do to help? And then know where they can find resources for whatever kind of help they identify. If you're part of a book club or a social group or a business, please invite us to come talk with your friends and coworkers about the realities of sexual violence in our community and how we can all find ways to respond to, and most importantly, ways to engage in the prevention of violence. We can all do something to work towards the day when current levels of violence will no longer be seen as inevitable and as acceptable. We are number 8. Thank you.
Hey, everybody. My name is Heather Sywell, and I am the program director of the Safe Families for Children program over at Hearts with a Mission. Hearts with a Mission serves clients via our Runaway Homeless Youth Shelter, which is an emergency shelter housing 10 to 17-year-olds. We have 2 transitional living programs that house 18 to 22-year-olds, and host home program, Safe Families for Children, which we can do respite care, long-term hosting, mentorship, and a circle of supports without any hosting. Many of the youth we serve are at risk for trafficking. We also come into contact with youth who have been trafficked. My favorite youth I met when I had first started at Hearts 5 years ago, she came to us via Redemption Ridge and was participating in our ILP program. It did not take long for her to return to the streets where our hearts were broken. She wandered into my office on a Friday the 13th saying she was done living this way. We put her into a host home, and that lasted exactly 90 days before she jumped out the window and returned to the streets. So it was about 1.5 years before I saw her again, and she had wandered into my house pregnant. So once again, we rallied, and I brought her into my own home for a short time before she moved into our TLP program. She had the baby, was very protective of the baby, spent time in group housing, another TLP, obtained her phlebotomy license, got her own housing, got her license, and just recently bought her first car. Yeah. So she's obtained her employment for the last 1.5 years. So my point is, these are long walks, they're meaningful walks, and they're impactful and full of life. We have a tangible needs list that we put out weekly if we're having families in youth that are having needs, and we always take financial donations, but the hardest need to fill is volunteers. So we cannot do this without you. Our focus is on implementing non-paid relationships in our clients' lives, and my dream has always been to have a small volunteer team equipped to jump in and support trafficking victims quickly, or just giving them a safe place to be and some time to make a longer-term plan. We believe the relationship is an intervention. We provide the professional services, and our volunteers bring the heart. So please come see us at booth number 9.
Loud shoes, I'm sorry. Rosa Van Gordon again with Community Works. We are over at booth number 10. My supervisor, Crystal, and I are here representing Community Works. By show of hands, how many people are aware of Community Works in the community? Just for my knowledge, awesome. I love to see those hands. We are a nonprofit that specializes in providing confidential, privileged advocacy for survivors of sexual assault, domestic violence, stalking, and human trafficking, which is both sex and labor trafficking. We have a 24/7 helpline, so if you would like, we have plenty helpline cards. These helpline cards can go to people who need someone to talk to, simply need a resource in the community, just a safe person on the other line to speak to about what's going on in their situation can be extremely empowering. We have a 30-day emergency shelter, and we're in the process of opening a transitional living facility for folks to transition into that is going to be up to 2 years living. It's called Mary's Haven. So look forward to that. We need so much more transitional living in our community. Some of the things that we need are volunteers to be able to work on our helpline. We need tangible resources such as clothing, hygiene products. We need phones, gift cards, all sorts of good stuff to hand out to people who are just needing to get safe and get their basic needs met. A story that stands out to me about a survivor who received services from us for 7 years, 2 of which I had the honor of working with her. She was a survivor of sex trafficking on the Greenway. Her form of trafficking, unfortunately, was that she had to have survival sex in order to have a tent to sleep in. For several years, she would come in and request phones, safe services, to sit down with us and just to have somewhere that was reliable, that she could come in where she knew she could speak to someone. And just last year, I heard from her. It had been 6 months since I had heard from her. And she let me know that she is enrolled in university. She just got her first apartment, and she is doing extraordinarily well out of our community and safe. We were luckily able to use donations to then send her things to get her set up successfully for school and for her apartment. So just to show her those tangible items can go towards. So thank you so much for being here.
Hi everyone, my name is Lisa Stottmiller and this is Darian Alvarado. We work for Youth 715 Ministries. We are a local nonprofit that has 14 different programs that help youth create confidence by providing a hope in Jesus and break free from emotional poverty. We serve youth from elementary school till 24 who are looking for a safe place to go to get a meal, have fun, and create trusting relationships. We are looking for volunteers, mentors, event participants, sponsors, anyone and everyone. And when you partner with us in one of those ways, you are providing a transformed world for a boy who lives in a one-bedroom hotel room with his grandparents, cousins, and siblings. You are making a significant impact on a 24-year-old VOTEC student who not only got trade skills, but also learned the value of having a safe place to go to and have a meal with people that care about him. You are creating a safe space for a girl with autism who felt like an outcast her entire life until she came to 715. And you are supporting the single teen mom that is trying to give her baby the life that she didn't get to have herself. And you are changing the life of the boy with absent drug-addicted parents who left them at a park alone overnight while they went to get their fix. You are changing the lives of thousands of people in the community when you sponsor or partner with us or mentor or volunteer. And we would love to talk to you more about how to give kids a brighter future. We're at booth 11 right over there in the corner. So thank you.
Hello, my name is Serena Pori, and I'm the Development Director for Family Solutions. We're a mental health nonprofit, and we work with foster youth to provide residential services and therapeutic foster care. In these programs, we work with youth who've experienced trauma, neglect, and abuse, including human trafficking. We're working to address the trauma that they've experienced, help them to understand what a healthy relationship with an adult looks like. And empower them to heal and grow and hope for the first time in a long time. Each journey is different, but consistently showing up for kids, making them feel heard, and patiently guiding them as they work and stumble and pick themselves up again is where we're able to see healing happen and a shift begin to take place. When in crisis, it feels like this is how things are gonna be forever. You lose hope. And programs like ours and like each of these phenomenal nonprofits are a part of making that change, part of changing that internal narrative and allow light to shine through. If you'd like to support our efforts, Family Solutions is looking for employees to be a part of this work, foster families to work alongside us to provide a safe and healthy home. Or if you'd like to make a donation, we're always in need of electric razors and new towels and monthly financial donors to fund field trips and extracurricular activities. Thank each and every single one of you for being here today. Gaining this knowledge is empowering us to make this change happen. So thank you so much for being here. And I'm at booth 12. All right, thank you.
And I'm Carol Wythe. I am here representing the Center for Spiritual Living Rogue Valley. Our center is a spiritually focused nonprofit that seeks to evolve the consciousness of love, cooperation, and compassion into a world that works for everyone. And I just want to say that I know right here and right now that I'm in the middle of people involved in exactly that. So I'm just grateful to be here and to be experiencing something that's hard and ugly, but I see so many beautiful, hopeful, positive things. It's just lovely. We are a community of inclusion and non-judgment, where each individual life is sacred and welcomed. We know that as we love and respect each individual, no matter where they find themselves at the moment, all are capable of loving themselves and others and can make better choices in their life. We are here to support individuals in their personal growth, providing them the tools they need to find their own path, whatever that looks like for them. We offer classes and workshops and retreats. Our Sunday services are at the center and also online on Facebook and YouTube. We have youth programs, just so many things going on, and they're all inclusive, supportive, accepting. It's our honor to be present at the summit, and I didn't realize when I wrote this short speech that it really is a deep, deep honor. And I thought when I was coming that it was a way for me to introduce us to the community and tell you that I believe as we are known better in the community and the community comes to know us, we have a lot to offer. And what I see now is that we really do have that. And so I think by all of us becoming more, and by all of us, I mean the spiritual side of things. There's a young couple over there. We've got so much to offer these kids and these people, and you're doing it. So I'll quit with that. Come visit us at table 13. We'll sign you up for our newsletter or whatever, and tell you what we do and why we think we can create a world that works for everyone.
Can you hear me? Greetings, everyone. My name is Alhena Katani, and I'm the founder and executive director of Keeping All Women Safe Cause. We're a 501c3 nonprofit working to help create a world where there is zero tolerance for violence against women and girls and everyone. We do a number of things. Many women contact us with the full range of violations. We refer to those agencies who are appropriate for them. We may speak with the police chief about reopening an investigation. We may mediate a dispute. We may offer other options for the individual. We also offer training events in self-defense, situational awareness, nervous system regulation introduction. We sell those pretty pocket sirens, which are great because they can't be turned against you. And we also choose special projects, of which I'll share one that I took on over the last few years. There is a gentleman who has essentially terrorized and traumatized countless women and girls across this valley. He has been arrested over 20 times. He would serve some time but be released and continue this reign of terror. Women had given up hope. A woman contacted me, actually several, but one woman in particular, and told me what he had just done. Terrified me. I contacted the police chief, and he essentially told me, we know it's a problem and we don't have a solution. I heard myself saying, I'm taking it on. Now, I didn't know what that meant at the time, but a few days later, I determined to create an online petition with a demand to the court that women in Southern Oregon have more safety from this individual, and that this individual be lodged where he could get the help he needed. I got over 1,000 signatures in 2 weeks with many alarming stories, presented it to the court. The DA assigned was very grateful, used it, and this man got the maximum sentence. He then got out, reoffended in 3 weeks, back into court, new DA, very welcoming to my participation and input, and he's now lodged in the state hospital for a minimum of 2 years. Sometimes we need to be bold to claim what we need. I also want to share real quickly that I'm very dedicated and passionate for this work for women because I myself entered Ashland many years ago with nothing, escaping from a very dangerous situation. So please come and see us at table 14, volunteer if you can, and continue to care. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Kathy McCullough. I'm with Seroptimus of Medford. For those of you that don't know what Seroptimus is, it is a global volunteer network of women in 130 countries and territories who work to improve the lives of women and girls. Best for women, that's what Seroptimus stands for. What the organization strives to be, women at our best, helping other women to be their best. One of our signature programs is Live Your Dream, of which I know there are several women here who have received that award, one of which, and we're very, very, very proud of her, is Rebecca Bender. She got that award before Rebecca Bender Initiative and everything, so we're very proud of that. So this is one of our latest winners in Medford, and I'd like to read her letter. I am deeply honored to be the recipient of your Live Your Dreams Award Scholarship for the 24-25 academic school year. As a single mother and survivor of domestic violence, this scholarship will give me the financial confidence and encouragement I need to continue my educational journey forward with covering tuition costs such as books, fees, gas, and food. I am a survivor of childhood trauma, witnessing domestic violence and abuse among my parents. I am a survivor of domestic violence from a prior relationship where I endured pain and suffering in the beginning years of motherhood. My strength to break free has allowed me to provide a safe and healthy life for myself and my child. I am committed to my educational goal of becoming a registered nurse and feel extremely grateful to not only represent your program, but also be an advocate to women like myself. And with that, we also have a check for Ride My Road to support Lauren, and we support her all the time, so thank you.
Well, I can't follow that up, but I'm just going to talk real fast about what we have going on. Hi, my name is Parker Marquez. I'm with Euteneier and the Medford Drop. The Medford Drop is a nonprofit youth center that serves ages 14 to 25, and we're located on Central Avenue in Medford. We serve young people by providing a safe and empowering space in Jackson County. Our team of trained peer support specialists draw from their own lived experiences to establish connections with young people who may need support or guidance. We also work with high-risk and unhoused youth and serve as a safe LGBTQIA space. The Medford Drop is open Monday through Friday from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m., and our peer support staff is available from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. for youth in crisis or for meetings with community partners. We provide a variety of free services, including a clothing exchange, a mini food pantry, a stage with instruments, gaming computers, and a community library. Additionally, we host weekly events such as open mic nights, workshops, and movie screenings. Our program offers a variety of resources and services to support young people in their professional and personal growth. This includes a leadership advisory board, substance use recovery groups, workshops on healthy relationships and life skills, assistance with job applications and resume building, distributing free bus passes, and individualized support sessions with our peer support specialists. A key focus for us right now is helping young people who are aging out of our program, so around 26 years old. We hope to partner with other organizations to support that transition. Additionally, we are looking to boost our youth engagement and would love an opportunity to work with other youth organizations, high schools in the area, and other high school age youth. Lastly, which is not up there, we're looking for funding to start a community garden with our youth that struggle with food insecurity. so that they can have fresh fruits and vegetables that are available every day for them. Come visit us at booth 16 to get more information about the services we provide and to meet us.
How cool was that?